Listeners, welcome back on Thanksgiving week to Destination Aviation. I'm your host, Jeff Miller. Turkeys can't fly, but let's hope the airplanes can out there. Everybody gets to where they want to go, where they need to be, and that's probably with family and loved ones. I know I will not be taking to the skies myself this week, but I will probably be driving to see dear old mother in Ohio. But we have another lengthy interview today, but a good interview. It is the first time on our podcast that we've interviewed someone from a maintenance, repair, overhaul facility, and that facility be West Star Aviation with Patrick Moylan, who is their Chief Safety and Quality Officer. So we're going to get right into the interview, and we will follow up at the end of this with our show notes and wishing everybody happy holidays as we venture into November and beyond to this time of the season. But without further ado, we'll jump right over to Patrick. Well, Patrick, welcome to Destination Aviation. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, you flew in today, right? Into O'Hare?
I flew in last night.
You flew in last night?
I did, yep.
How was that experience with all the craziness going on?
Well, the departure flight out of Ithaca was actually welcome because I didn't have to get up at 4 a.m, but I did have to make 2 connections. But I got here on time.
On time. TSA was fine.
Fine, yeah.
Well, that's great.
I fly out of airports that have 4 flights a day. The lines are not very long.
Is that what Ithaca has?
Yeah.
So that is home for you. I didn't know that.
Yes,
we'll get into that here in a second. But we have met each other, I think, twice now before we sat down for this interview, right?
Yep.
And our first time was at, and I did have NATA on here, and they told me you can kind of call it whatever. I think they officially call it NATA, but NATA.
Yeah, they finally made a positive decision on that. NATA it is.
Oh, so it is. They're sticking with. Okay. All right, NATA it is. I mean, they did tell me that's what they go with, but they're like, you call us NATA, whatever you want to do. But we had met there for Legislative Day, and then Day on the Hill, and then we just recently saw each other again in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And now look, you flew in from Ithaca.
There you go. Yep.
Just to see us.
And we also have a facility for the company I work for, which I'm sure we're going to get into, and so it was kind of a nice 2 for 1.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. We were talking before we got on the mics here. You're officially MRO, right? Maintenance, repair, overhaul.
That's right.
And that's, and that is your day job with West Star, correct?
Correct. West Star Aviation. We are the largest MRO in the United States.
Largest MRO in the United States. And we'll get into that here in a second. But we talked about how we met, and I think we got along pretty well. It seemed like, at least, I don't know.
Yeah, we visited several congressional offices and made some emphatic points. And
we took an amazing photo.
We did.
It's an amazing photo to send to a colleague.
That's right.
But how did you get into aviation? You're from New York. Ithaca, is that?
No.
That's not home.
I'm actually from the Detroit area, and I grew up.
I'm a fellow Michigander too.
Are you really?
I'm going to do the hand thing that nobody can see.
I do. There's a ferry out of there.
I used to work on that ferry.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have lots to talk about.
Look at that. I was housekeeping. That was a fun teenager job.
Yes. I took that ferry long time ago.
4.5 hours.
Yeah, it's almost as long as driving around Lake Michigan.
Yes, it's just purely for nostalgia purposes.
Yes. I grew up in Michigan, and in the early '90s, I was going to Michigan State University, and I wasn't really sure after a couple of years what I wanted to do for my, I kind of finished my first 2 years of essentially undecided, and I was really not sure where I wanted to go, and I wanted to finish college, but only when I had a real clear path. And so rather than just, move home and work at the local grocery store and, take community college, I said, I'm going to do something that's going to advance my life and career and, something a little bit more dramatic than that. And so I joined the Marine Corps. I thought that was...
wow. Well, thank you for your service. Yeah. One day after Veterans
and 2 days after the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps.
That's right. Yeah. Congratulations.
How do I look for 250?
You look fantastic.
So, I joined the Marine Corps, enlisted, and when you take the ASVAB, basically the entrance, when you get you get your score back, and they say, well, these are the different jobs that you're qualified to enter. And the first thing I saw was air traffic control, which sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And so I joined the Marines. You go through same boot camp and same combat training as everybody else, no matter what their jobs are. And then you go to about a 6 month class, 6 months of classes. at the Air Traffic Control School, which at the time was outside Memphis. I think they're down at Pensacola now.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The Navy and Marine Corps do the training for their controllers together. And then I did the rest of my 4-year enlistment at the airfield at Quantico, Virginia.
Wow.
I was a tower controller, eventually tower supervisor before I finished. Yeah, so that was like my first job in aviation, was working at a control tower. It was the home of HMX-1, any transient airplanes. We were class Delta.
Okay.
So it wasn't just the arrivals and departures, but any traffic helicopters, transitions, the Bud blimp, and whoever's flying through our airspace, right? So.
I'm going to use, I guess, my professionalism here and say what I think the word is. So at Quantico, I would assume you saw a lot of aircraft with the doohickeys on it, and by that I mean like the FBI. Like we had some aircraft, like King Airs and stuff at FBO I worked at that came in. And I don't know. I don't know what's going on at Quantico. I just hear the name and I think, okay, and Jeff dumbassery, like X-Files and Quantico, they said all the time. Is there like, the aircraft that they're doing special missions with? I remember some would show up from, I don't know if it was Quantico, but the DC area where they would just be outfitted with like a ton of antennas and, blacked out windows and whatever I don't know what they're doing, but
yeah. So the HMX-1 started off as experimental, so it was not started as the presidential helicopter transport, which is what most people associate it with.
Yeah.
But it's really, that's what the X stands for, is experimental. So it was started, just that squadron was started.
Yeah.
I was in the headquarters squadron, and our only tenant was HMX-1.
Wow.
So they would do experimental stuff like new avionics or new night vision goggles or whatever, and then eventually they inherited the presidential transport, which is the white top helicopters.
Yeah,
so green side and white top.
Oh, okay. You know what? I did never heard of. I mean, I know I've obviously seen it, but I didn't realize that those just had the white top. But yeah, that makes total sense now.
Yeah. So I was in the mid. That was in the mid '90s. So they had the H3, and then the H60s, which were more able to go on overseas trips and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Air Force One came into South Bend when I worked there, and I was actually able to get onto Air Force One while it was there. But they had brought in, is it Marine One, right?
When the president's on board, yes.
And so. Those guys, though, were like, you're not going in it. You're not coming around it.
You're not going to look at it.
No. They did let some of our police officers closer, but it was a stark difference between the Air Force and Air Force One and kind of that relationship I guess I had with them. But to the helicopter, like, no. You can't even really look, let alone touch. Stay away.
Even on the base, so Quantico is a Marine Corps base. It's fairly large and it has its own gate to get into. And then you get into the airfield, which has its own gate. Yeah. And that's where my barracks was, and that's where I'd walk to the tower every morning. And then inside that was the white top section, which had the deadly force authorized signs around it. So it was like a fortress within a fortress within a fortress. So they took care of the helicopters.
They were all business. I would say a professional group of people. It's interesting because there really wasn't much conversation. They kind of did every time I've had. That type, and we've had it, around different airports I've been at. They're usually pretty serious about, not that, the Air Force and their deal, but it just seems like, maybe there's more of a connection to like an airport operator in that Air Force One movement than Marine One. They kind of do their own thing.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the helicopters are easier to, if there's a security issue or a safety issue with a helicopter, it's a little more vulnerable than a 747 possibly.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I will have to say, though, because you mentioned this, and there is someone that listens to our podcast that is mad about MSU.
It's probably a Wolverine.
Yeah, right. No, they love it. Their daughter's going there now. They went there. I think their husband went there. And they listen to every episode, so I know she's going to hear this, but I had to at least be like a shout out to you and Spartans, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I went to the homecoming a couple weeks ago. We didn't win, but it was good to be.
Oh, she was there.
Look at that. Good. I'll probably walk by her at the tailgates,
right? Exactly. So you just so I get this right, you graduated from MSU, and then you went in?
No, I was 2 years in.
Okay.
And before I got into my upper level classes, essentially without a declared major, I said, well, let me go do something.
Gotcha. Okay.
I did the 4 years.
Okay.
I took some classes while I was there at night and whatever I could arrange. And then when I got out, I was able to use some of the GI Bill to finish my last 3 semesters.
Oh, that's great.
At Michigan State. So I graduated a year after I got out.
So you were air traffic controller for 5 years?
4 years.
4 years in the service. You left Quantico. You were at Quantico the whole time as air traffic controller. You didn't want to transition into that space. You decided you didn't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was more into. I mean, I loved the job. It was amazing. Honestly, one of my goals was if I was going to do something for 4 years, I wanted it to be able to be a skill that I would be able to transfer out of it. Of course, any skill in the Marine Corps is going to transfer leadership skills, discipline skills, all the things that just make a well-rounded, person in that organization. But on top of that, I got a technical, experience that was if I decide some of my colleagues back then, my fellow Marines did go into the FAA,
right,
and they're now retired,
right.
So I sometimes reflect on that, but at the same time, I really wanted to be more I was engrossed by the whole airspace aviation system that really I wanted to dive into. And if I wanted to do only air traffic control, that was choice A. Yeah. If I wanted to just explore the whole of aviation, right, I couldn't stay in that one field. Right. So I decided, I went back to finish school, and then I immediately got my first job in the civilian world, and it was at a 135 cargo airline right in Lansing. Yeah. And I was doing, flight scheduling. I was doing pilot scheduling. Yeah. We had an FBO, and I was I was in at that point.
Right. And this also too would have been like late 90s. So yep. And so your family, like you grew up in that area, so your mom and dad, and they were all from that area.
Yeah, Southeast Michigan.
Southeast. Okay. Yep. So my dad's side of the family, they were all like Flint, Michigan, that area, Grand Blanc a little bit more. Flint, Grand Blanc was more ritzy, but they all grew up. 60s, 70s era working at, automotive and all
my dad and my grandfather and a bunch of my uncles all worked for the big three. I grew up thinking everyone worked for a car company. Right. They do in Detroit. Yeah. But, that's not so much everywhere else.
Yeah. It's interesting because I still have distant, kind of cousins and stuff in the area. And even to this day, they work in automotive, typically now not directly for the companies. It's all, as we know, been diversified and moved out. But they work for some of the, ancillary. They do components or service centers after the car, whatever it might be. But there's still this connection in some way that either they're, a mechanic over the phone giving guidance to a dealership in Alabama, whatever it might be. But yeah, I love the area. So you got back, you're working at Lansing. Now you said it was an FBO that had maintenance.
It was a 135 airline. The name of it was Superior Aviation. They've been since, I think they were bought up by Martin Air. Think about Wiggins, some of those kind of companies. The overnight caravans. So we had about 45 airplanes. Wow. And Lansing was the kind of the main hub, although we had flights all throughout the country. Yeah. So we had, UPS would fly in their big planes into their regional hubs. Yeah. I think we got a flight from Rockville here, not too far away from here. And then a couple from Louisville. And then, they would sort it and they would put it on our 12 or 13 caravans and metros, and we would fly it up to Iron Mountain, Michigan, Alpena, Ludington. Yeah. And that's how you get your packages overnight.
I probably saw you. I was living up there at that time. I probably saw you go to. It's funny because I remember. So the first airport I worked at was Manistee, Michigan. Yeah. Yeah. And so I bounced around a little bit through. We had Central Air Service, and still at that point trying to figure out what I want to do in life, my career. But I remember. I think it was, it might have been smaller than the Caravan, but I thought it was Lansing. Anyway, there was an outfit, maybe it's the same, but they used to pick up checks from the banks, and they would run them back, I think, to Lansing, but they would get all the deposited checks, and they put them in boxes, and put them in the plane, and it was something that they would go around to all the airports in northern Michigan. And they probably don't do that anymore, but to get.
No, I know exactly. It wasn't. I mean, we did have a 404 that would fly around.
Yeah,
but it was unscheduled. Like Airborne Express was another customer of ours. But there was companies that would do. They would be in a small, maybe a 310 or something, or a beach. Small beach or something that they would fly in. But, we would be the bulkier. We were one step up from that. So that, the overnight freight could, work for whatever UPS had at the time. And it was the dawn of the internet, late 90s. And we were thinking, this is going to take off. And of course, the planes just kept getting bigger at that point. But we also had operations in, Denver was a hub. We had some out in Pennsylvania. But, that whole, because we had all the infrastructure, Lansing was the largest, probably 14, 15 flights a day. But they would all go out in the morning and all come back at night. But we had the maintenance, we had the building where the pilots would come and go. And we had the fuel trucks and the fuel farms. So we also ran an FBO as a kind of, because we had the assets.
Makes sense,
and we did the fueling of the airlines. And so that's kind of where I got into, like, this is the epicenter. This is the airport is the epicenter of all things. It's cargo, passengers. We would get, and then I was starting to see people fly in private, like, oh, look, there's Leanne Ryan walking through the lobby. Like, and you're like, oh, your eyes just become wider and wider. And you're like, there's a whole lot to this world, right? But and then of course that just accelerated, and then it becomes more normal at that point. But at the time, it was super exciting. It still is super exciting. It's just so. And actually, I thought something in my future might be like airport director would be the best job in aviation, because you are managing all. I don't think there's a single constituency you don't have as an airport director.
No, it is. People ask me about it. It's funny because, and I just did this 2 weeks ago. We had a really nice event here with the Chicago Bulls, and they have students that they kind of, work with, nurture into different career fields, right? And they're younger in high school, and they don't really understand, even like this, somebody along the way has to tell you, right? Like, I didn't know when I was getting in this career field. I'm like, what? Okay, there's a pilot. What else is, like, you don't know, right? You're a teenager. Like, but it's funny because, I'll go and it'll be someone like in your role, right? And they have, the engine opened up and cool stuff. And then they'll have a pilot and, and then I'm usually third in line, and I'm like, all right, this is my desk. And,
this emails.
Yeah, right. This is the lease I recently structured. But, I tell people, I'm like, I'm like, it is a really, I wanted to be a pilot when I first got into this industry. And I think a lot of people probably have that thought. And at the time, it was atrocious salary-wise to be a pilot. It was just horrible. And then as my first job was paint hangers and, cutting grass. And then I'm like, okay, so like, somebody has to watch over this thing, right? Like, just stuff doesn't just happen here. And so, I figured out my pathway. But, I tell people, I was like, I have friends that love flying, and they absolutely do. And they, to this day, and then I have others that loved it, and then it became a job. And they don't, the joy for them is not really there anymore. They won't go up, like I'll talk to them, like, oh, are you going to go up this week? Why the hell would I do that? I've been flying Monday through Friday. Yeah. I'm not going up. And so, I was like, I do like this role now, in the sense of I still get to fly, but I get to fly on my time and what's enjoyable for me. And I get to meet people like you and help people with, different developments and different ideas, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. And so I would absolutely, it may not be the first thought in people's mind, and even to this day. So I got my bachelor's degree at Embry-Riddle, and when we were graduating, like, the engineering side was like 15, 20 minutes, this person, and then they got to mine. It was aviation management. It was me and another person. It's like, Jeff Miller, all right, next. Like it, and so it's one of those career fields that I think a lot of times people, it's just not in your head, right?
Yeah.
But I would recommend it to yourself or to other people. Like, it is really fun. A lot of it's dependent on the airport, usually, right? In that, I mean, the governing structure and are they supportive of the airport, that type of stuff. But I think you would be great at it. Did you fly when you were with the maintenance outfit, or were you working on the aircraft, or what was your role in Lansing at this?
I was the manager of the, it was a flight coordination manager or something like that. So I ran the guys that basically dispatched, but we didn't have to have licenses because of 135. But we did all the flight planning, the flight scheduling, weather. Because we would have probably 40 flights a day, out of the 45 planes we had. Yeah. And so there was always a snowstorm in Minot or Idaho Falls or Iron Mountain, Michigan or something, or a mechanical. So we were the folks, my small team would be the pilots would call in, or we would send the diversions because the trucks would have to meet us at those outstations. Yeah. But I also ran the FBO. Wow. As a side part of my job, as well as the front desk customer service. And so I did that for just a little over 3 years. And while I was doing that, I was going to school to get my master's in business. Yeah. At MSU? At MSU, yeah. So
it's funny. So the previous episode right to this one, the one that was out, is Maria with Minot. And she's the ops manager up there. And we were talking about it, and she said, because I was like, is it Minot? I said, no, it's Minot. The first thing in my head is, I was like, I got a great idea for you. Why not Minot? And then she immediately said it. I'm like, oh yeah, these people have lived here forever. Why would it? Of course, they have thought of that decades ago. It's a stupid idea, Jeff. But then they got rid of it. They should bring it back.
I when I was learning the route structure, this stuck in my head when I started the job, and I was looking at the route structure because the guy was training me because he was becoming a pilot, so I was taking that job. So he was like, we go to all the outstations, and then he pointed to Minot, and I had never said that word out loud before. Right. I said, Is that Minot? Because that's the French.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing French about North Dakota. So that's stuck in my head, so I don't ever forget Minot.
Minot. I love that. Yeah. No, so it's interesting to me at that kind of point. So you had, and I'll say to the point of, finding a position and a job, because I think we've all been, especially if you're at the beginning stages. I mean, air traffic control is a very unique job. I have family members that are air traffic controllers. If you'd have that experience come out, you come back to Lansing, did you know somebody, or did you just see this advertisement on the street?
Very much the latter. I definitely got lucky. Yeah. I still think it would have happened in some other way, but I literally was graduated a few months working at Kelly Services just to pay the rent. Yeah. While I was trying to figure out what to do, and I saw an ad. They used to have ads and news things.
Yeah, I remember those.
Before,
yeah,
and they were looking for a flight coordination supervisor. Yeah, and all it said was aviation experience required. And I said, "Well, I have aviation experience." Yeah, and I was the right person. They did not want somebody. They had every time somebody would take that job, they would just have one foot in it because they really wanted to fly. Right. Yeah. So as soon as they got their minimum hours, they were out. And they really needed a full time. Yeah. And that knew how to file flight plans and stuff. So it was perfect. But when I went into it, I thought, well, I've been a controller for 4 years. I know most everything about aviation. Right. And, first week, I didn't know that JP5 was the only aviation fuel. There was something called avgas, or Jet A is slightly different. So because all we had in the military is JP5. Yeah. And, so I learned that there's other kinds of fuel. I had to ask somebody what a yoke was. Yeah. That's embarrassing to say out loud, but why do you know if you don't know, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Why don't, and then I remember just epiphany after epiphany. And after literally probably a month or two, I said, okay, listen, you don't know anything about aviation. Right. Which totally reset my mind. Yeah. And I've just been a sponge ever since. So
I love that. And I'm going to try to sponge here because I hadn't heard JP4 in a long time. Is that because jet fuel at its base is really ultra refined diesel fuel, right?
Yeah,
Jet A.
Yeah, kerosene, diesel.
Is that, to refresh my memory, is that like a lesser refined JP4, right?
JP5
or JP5, sorry.
Yeah. I think it has to do with some additives. I don't think it's chemically different. I think you could put I mean, you fuel
Right. Yeah.
military aviation here with Jet A.
Yeah.
It's literally the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that there might be some very small additives or something.
It's funny because it goes to the thought that when I moved to Florida, and I was going to Embry-Riddle, it's an aeronautical university. Everybody there wants to be in aviation, and so when I got down there, I had experience at the first airport I was at, and it was a FBO run airport. And so the FBO manager was also the airport manager. And so, we did the fueling and all that stuff. And so I had some experience, but I remember when I got down there, even the people at the school were like, oh, you'll never get a job. Like nobody's, there's so many people.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And there was obviously no advertisements out because there's no jobs. And so I just went, there's 3 FBOs, and I just went around with my resume, and I was just, hey, and one guy was like, well, come in and talk to me. And then he's like, well, I might have something open. He's like, we're going to have something open. And then I went back, and that's how, I got it. And, but when I was there, I remember that was the first time I was asked about JP5.
Yeah. And
it was because we had the military contract. Yeah. And they were like, oh, we can just take jet fuel. That's fine. Because, it's one of those things I think again, when you said it, I'm like, oh, yeah, I haven't thought about that in decades. But so you found yourself here at this operation. That was the late 90s. How long did you spend there?
Just over 3 years. So, after the turn of the millennium, kind of a few months after, so I graduated in like December 99 with my MBA. And, my wife and I were looking to move to maybe a big city on the East Coast or, kind of start, hey, we're still in our 20s.
Yeah. Did you get that love because you were at Quantico to go back northeast, or did you and your wife already had that plugged in? It didn't really matter for your time in Quantico?
Well, we had met while I was in D.C.
Oh, okay. So you both kind of wanted to get back or she did maybe?
We both did. We wanted to, we were thinking, let's move to Philadelphia or Boston or Baltimore or D.C. or something. So I, in May of 2000, my wife and I both moved. We moved to Baltimore.
Okay.
She got a job there, and then I quickly got a job as well. I just wrote a letter to the largest FBO chain that I knew of, which is Signature Flight Support, Signature Aviation now. And I just said, I didn't know anybody at Signature. I just knew that they were much larger chain than we were. Yeah. And at the time, they were only, I think, 8 years old at that point.
Yeah, so even then, they probably were, 70 locations? But still big for, I remember that time frame when they were coming about. But,
and we had the FBO in Lansing, and we had a small FBO in Iron Mountain, Michigan, so we were nothing compared to that. So I wrote a letter just to the HR office, because at the time I didn't know where we were going to move. And I just said, my name is Patrick Moylan, here's my resume. I have some, 3 years of civilian experience, 4 years of military experience, and I have, at this point now, two degrees that can just, I would like to put that into use in your company.
I love that.
And before I heard back from them, my wife had gotten a job in Baltimore, so we said, well, let's just move.
Yeah.
And they called me 2 weeks later and said, hey, we got your letter.
Yeah.
We have an opening. Would you consider moving to BWI? So I was already in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so the coincidence wasn't that. The coincidence was that they had an opening in the city I had already moved to.
Yeah.
So I just think it's an incredible coincidence that happened. So I worked there, and then
I guess that just kind of struck me. I guess in my mind I was thinking but you didn't tell them you were in the Baltimore area?
I wasn't at the time. I wrote a letter.
Oh, wow.
I wrote the letter saying I'm willing to move anywhere.
Yeah.
And there wasn't like somebody that came back and said, we have an opening in Long Beach, California.
Yeah, that is serendipitous.
So
I mean, to have that.
So I wrote that letter while I was looking, and I had applied to some other jobs that I'm glad I didn't get.
Yeah, we all have that, I think, right?
I had applied for a job at the airlines too.
Yeah.
I figured, well, I was not in the airline business except for the fueling operation. But,
right.
You think, well, I guess I have to go apply to United or Northwest or whatever. And so while that was happening, my wife was looking for a job too. She got the job in Baltimore. We moved, and then 2 weeks later, I got the call asking if I'd be interested in that one job. So I took that job.
Yeah.
In 2000.
No, yeah, that's crazy how life just throws some of that weirdness towards you. Maybe it is all connected in some way. It's weird because sometimes there's this stuff that's like, can that be a coincidence? I guess it is. I don't know.
Well, I like that saying. You kind of whatever, you make your own luck, or the harder you work, the more lucky you get. But obviously there's a lot outside of my control. But had I not written the letter, it wouldn't have mattered, right? Or if I hadn't looked at that, at that ad on the day that they were hiring for the position that was right for me, then it would have gone to somebody else, and I would be.
I think that's a really cool message because, there are people that do listen to this podcast and they reach out, and I'm always happy on my end to either connect people, because it happens sometimes after people hear some, I want to talk to them, or stuff that I can help people with. But, I think the example there of doing that, right, writing the letter, or in my case, stopping in, what I mean? The first few people I asked, no way, you're not going to get anything. And I'm like, well, I'll wait for them, I guess, to tell me no. And the first two places I stopped were exactly that. Are you kidding me? Get out of here. We have way too many people. We don't need anybody. So 2000, you're in Baltimore, and then I'm assuming you were there when aviation changed.
So 2000, I was starting work for Signature at the FBO when we were switching. We were building a new FBO at the time, which
that's exciting.
Very exciting, yeah. And it was a great time to be there. I helped facilitate that opening. I was in charge of all the general aviation. I was essentially the FBO manager. Yeah. But we also at that time had all the commercial stuff as well. Yeah. So there was somebody else running the commercial side.
How cool for you though, in your career, though, that you go from probably were you more like middle or number two management at the company in Lansing and Iron? Right? I mean, you had an outfit in Ironwood. Yeah. To running an FBO at, I don't know if it's a large hub airport, but it's a big medium hub. If it's not large,
we had about 100. We had about 100 tenants there.
Kudos to you. That's awesome.
We were building a new FBO. Yeah, it's the sole source of a major airport. Yeah. It was the big leagues for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say you lightning that. After just hitting Lansing and heading over, that's awesome.
Yeah, and like in Lansing, we would get it was a big day if like a Lear would show up.
Right.
Oh my gosh, there's a Lear here. I mean, how many gallons are we gonna get out of that? To looking out at a place like BWI, and there's big iron all up and down. Oh yeah. But it's the same. I'm using air quotes. Oh yeah, and the same like. You have to have you have to be good at personnel management. You have to understand budgets. You have to understand your constituency, airport, the community, the corporate structures. Yeah. I mean, and all the things that I had done previously helped me achieve those goals.
Yeah. Were you replacing a existing Signature location at BWI, or was this a new entrance into the airport, brand new FBO for you as Signature? Were you replacing what was already there? I mean,
no. The building was very dated. Okay, it was the old pre-Signature FBO that was just very dated. So they were building a modern FBO. Yeah, down 2 hangars over. And so they relocated they kind of did what you were showing me earlier here at Chicago Executive. They moved the T hangars over that we were managing. They redid the ramp. They opened up a new FBO building and 2 brand new hangars. Yeah. So if you go there now, there's the 3. I don't think they've built anything new, but like there's the 2 big hangars there, and then the old hangar, which is now basically kind of like the small hangar with maintenance and stuff.
So the facility that you put in place, I mean, obviously it's only been now, I guess 23, 24 years, but still in operation.
Oh, yeah.
You go back and see it sometime?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was probably been 2 or 3 years ago I went last, but yeah, there's fewer and fewer people that know who I am. But right. 1 or 2.
So how long did it take you to get that built and underway? So you came in when they were building it, right?
Like the foundation had been laid, and the previous person in that role had moved on to a different role, and so I kind of jumped right in, and I was the primary point of contact with the construction people,
the airport,
the airport I did have a general manager that would do, a lot of that as well. But, the day-to-day over, and then we had to move, right? You had to turn the key off on one and open without any interruption in service. It was an exciting logistical challenge for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, it sounds exciting. I mean, what a project to get coming in right out the door. I mean, you get to, I guess the design probably was done, but you get to build out in a new space. And
where do you want the just a couple things. Like I remember going through and noticing that in the line room there was no water line for the coffee.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Like that's an important thing in an FBO, right? Like,
that's probably
we're going to be carrying a lot of buckets of water. Like, so there was that small changes.
Yeah, they could care about the JP5, but where's the coffee?
Yeah, where's the coffee?
Where's the coffee?
We're going to put the papers. But yeah, there was a lot of detail stuff. Beyond the roof line, which was obviously already done at that point. But it's also when you open it up, you have to have it look like a home for the pilots and the passengers, and there's a lot of detail that makes that happen.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. And so at that time, were you the only FBO at BWI? You were.
Still are, right?
It is really. So it's one FBO airport. Yeah. Wow, that's so. How long did you spend at Baltimore?
Okay, so I did. The before, I think you were referring to 9/11 earlier.
That's yes. I figured yes.
So we had opened up the new facility.
Yeah.
We had probably the most dramatic day in my aviation career, which was the 2001 inauguration of George Bush.
Yeah.
George W. Bush.
Yeah.
So if you remember, it was a change of administration, but a change of party. Every business jet in the country came to D.C. There was a huge snowstorm.
Yeah.
DCA and Dulles, which is what most people think of when they go to fly in there, closed. Right. They just stopped accepting flights. So guess where they all came?
BWI.
We had a line of business jets all the way to the other side of the airport.
Wow.
And we had no expectation that this was going to be. We thought this was going to be a few airplanes coming to Baltimore.
Yeah.
And everybody else would go to DCA and Dulles.
Yeah.
What really happened is it overwhelmed the system. Yeah. So we had hundreds of business jets that all flew in. We somehow managed to get them parked and everyone on their way. And then if you remember, 2001, there was a snowstorm, ice storm. You can Google it later, but there was a major ice storm the morning of that.
Yeah.
And then everyone, after the parties
that was it.
On the 21st, they all came back at the same time, 10:30.
Yeah.
And they all wanted to leave.
They
all wanted to be de-iced with an inch of ice. Right. They all wanted to be fueled. And all their passengers were senators, vice presidents, ambassadors.
Yeah, right. VIPs.
They were all VIPs.
At least you had that coffee line in.
We had the coffee, and that's really the only thing that we were basically. We didn't have any more fuel trucks. We didn't have any more de-ice trucks. We had enough to deal with normal circumstances. So anyway, my point is that was it was like, Super Bowl times 5 for the business aviation organization.
Is that so the next morning Dulles and DCA, they hadn't even opened up at that point? You were
I think we were all going through it. It was the morning after, and there was a huge snowstorm. Everyone wanted to leave. Everyone was important, and the ramps were literally packed. We had to tow. It had nose to tail. Every airplane had to be towed before it could start up and leave.
It's an interesting airport because, when I go to DC, I typically always try to go to Reagan if I can because it's right there. But people that go to Baltimore swear by it, love it, 4 access, get on Southwest, get in and out type of thing.
Easy come, easy go. And shout out to BWI.
A lot of passion for BWI. I do. For people that use it, But so that's good. At least you got through.
Yeah, I did. It was a very formative experience. But then later that year, 2001, I had a job posting that caught my eye. Actually, I think the way it happened, I had still back in the day it was a Monster.com or Hot Jobs. Whatever.
I forgot about Monster.com.
It had only been like a year since I'd been a signature, and so I got a query about an opportunity in DC, and it was working for the FAA's Office of System Safety.
Wow!
For an organization, a project or program called the Global Aviation Information Network, or GAIN.
Oh yeah, the acronym sounds familiar. GAIN. Yeah.
And it was around the late 90s up until the mid 2000s, and it was really a lot of the precursor to what we see in SMS in many ways. Like It didn't invent it out of the blue, but it was very much a catalyst. So it brought together safety organizations from around the world, right? That's the global part.
Right.
And really to facilitate the collection, analysis, and sharing of safety information. And back then, you know, if you remember, rewind 25 years, we still thought we were the safest industry in the world, and we were.
Yeah.
So, transportation, rather. But there was this goal, like we all knew the trajectory of air travel was going to double in 20 years. And if we didn't have our accident rate, we would have doubled the number of fatalities.
Right.
It was unacceptable, right?
Yeah.
It was a threat to the industry, not to mention the loss of human life.
Oh, yeah.
So there was this goal, the commercial aviation safety team was part of it, like this is goal of like 80% reduction. And at the time, there was a lot of people that were just like, well, how are you going to, we're so good now, how are we going to get even better?
Right.
And then lo and behold, I'm not attributing all this to gain or anything. I'm just saying in general, gain was part of a much larger effort from everybody. Is that, you know, we went years without any commercial. And think back to the 80s and 90s. It was kind of part of the deal.
It's funny. No, it was. You know, I said to somebody, you know, it's interesting to me because, you know, in my own mind, I lose track of time sometimes. And, you know, someone born, you know, 18 years old, you know, they've been in an environment where, you know, before the last accident that just happened at DC, I think it was a decade plus it, that we hadn't. But I remember before statistically, it was, I think this was around like early 2000s. Statistically, every 3 years, a commercial airliner would crash. Major fatalities type of scenario, right? And it was, I remember, you know, even after 9/11, I think it was that American Airlines 777 where they overused the rudder, ripped the tail off of it, leaving JFK.
I think it was a 300 maybe?
Was it a 300?
Right after
okay.
9/11, right?
Yeah. And, you know, you just, it's weird because like you said, it was part of the thing. And then we had this accident and people that in our country have never really experienced, you know, younger kids, or I should say younger adults, it's like, oh my God, like it's all so dangerous.
It's new, right?
Right, because, you know, it's almost becomes one of those things where, you know, it's like, well, hasn't happened in so long.
Yeah.
So kudos to you and your team for being a part of that to make it safer.
Well, yeah, and the reason I was so, there was again another formative. I was there for just over 4 years. Was I knew that if I was all in on aviation.
Yeah,
I knew that if I was going to just, you know, continue to grow, I needed to have experience at the FAA.
Yeah.
I was a contractor, but my office was right there at ASY.
Yeah.
100. Anyway, it's at the headquarters.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to have a strong background in safety, no matter what I was going to do in aviation.
Right.
Strong international, and it had all three: FAA, international, and safety. So it was awesome, and I got exposure to, you know, basically the steering committees.
Right.
The steering committee and all the working groups were industry people. They were all VPs of safety from airlines to labor organizations to associations, and I just got the context of this amazing international industry that really makes the world go around. So it was, if I wasn't in already, I was all in at that point. But I did that for 4 years, and I still stay in touch with those folks. Now, the Office of System Safety got folded into what's now, it's Flight Standards, and now it's Office of Safety or something like that. But that organization, you know, kind of did its thing, and a lot of those concepts that were really, you know, new at that point are just standard. I mean, you know, it's the first time I heard things like SMS or just culture or, you know, using data and, you know, collaboratively with other organizations. Like these were new concepts that are just taken for granted now. So like, again, not to give all the credit just to this one smaller group, but it was a facilitator of a larger trend in aviation to really get to the point where we are now. And it also pointed out that, like, look, you know, if I was skeptical the first time I heard, like, how are we going to cut something that's so close to zero by 80%? Yeah. We did, right? In the sense of the industry. And it just says that safety problems are solvable with the right approach and the right mindset, and the right resources and the right actions. No,
it's a powerful message. I'm curious to your opinion on this. I was at the National Association of State Aviation Officials, NASAO's conference.
Yes. NASAO's easier to say.
Yes. But for the people that are like, are you talking about Nabisco? I went to a panel session, and it was, I believe, mostly 135 operators equivalent, running mostly operations in Alaska. This was up in Anchorage. And, they were talking about how, SMS is mandatory for them. Now they have to come up with their plans, submit it, I guess, FSDO. I don't know which department it's run through, but anyways, they were talking about their plan and, having it in place and what it means for them and all the, but the interesting thing, and I mentioned this to the panel in the question section, but for airports, when SMS probably was really coming, I want to say maybe around like 2010, 2012 on the airport side of the road. It was one of those things that kept getting kicked down the road with the advisory circular of, we're going to have SMS, everybody's going to have to do it. And then it started peeling back a little bit. And so a lot of airports, especially on the general aviation side, some non-primary airports now too, they don't have to have an SMS program. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's interesting to me because it's been basically required of all these other outfits, right? 121, 135. I don't know if MROs, you don't know. So that's the interesting part. So do you see that at all as a gap? Because obviously, like in us, we follow a lot of safety protocols, and I would say we have a plan of kind to that. Do you see that it needs to evolve more into spaces like MRO or airports, or are you happy with where SMS is right now, with it being more in the operator's hands and larger airports too?
I think it is going to be most effective when the whole industry fully understands the concepts that are baked into SMS, and that takes time.
Yeah.
It takes consistent effort. It takes education, training, examples. So I think, and this is just my perception, is that, if the FAA were to say, well, you have to have it tomorrow, whenever you could say this happened, let's say this happened 10 years ago or today, either way,
right?
People would just check the box and say they had it.
Yeah.
And they would pay a consultant to write a manual and just call it a day.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. It's hard to hear this the first time, but safety is ultimately a voluntary process. People, when you're not overseeing them directly and forcing them to do something, which nobody really does on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
When you walk away, they're either going to do the thing or they're not, right? They're either going to report the hazard or they're not going to report the hazard. Either they're going to follow the procedure or they're not going to follow the procedure. Either they're going to put a reasonable protection in for eliminating or reducing that risk in the future, or they're not. So if you mandate something without, affecting the perception of why it's becoming standard, then it just becomes a check the box, which doesn't help anybody or do anything. So it needs to be
like cultural.
It needs to be rolled out at the same pace that organizations and systems like our national airspace system and everyone in it understands what it's trying to accomplish, so that it doesn't get cheapened by just surface level implementation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's funny because on the airport side to a lot of the way, because other airports have been, we were working towards implementing. We actually put a couple plans in place, but it really goes around severability versus probability and a matrix and an assessment, especially in an airport environment. If you're doing construction work, you're closing on a taxiway, all that type of stuff. But you mentioned the consultants, and this always made me laugh. And maybe you've heard it. I heard it from them, but they were doing, so Hawaii is the way, you probably know, but the way the airports in Hawaii work is like Alaska. They're all pretty much state run. I think all of them are. There may be some that don't fall into it, but you're a state employee. It's a state system, right? And so the airports, ultimately, you're a state employee, you work for the state. Anyways, so
same with Baltimore, interestingly.
Yeah. And I think Shannon Griffin, right, just took over the system there. She used to be with the FAA, probably in your part of the world, but so they're like, okay, this, the FAA saying the airports are going to have this safety management system. we're going to have to hire a consultant, to your point. And so I was talking with the consultant about it, and they said they went out there to do a, like to your point, build the culture. Just don't, here's your plan, right? And they wanted everybody to be involved with building it. And so they asked people, well, what about safety, messaging, safety? How do you just not make it a poster on the wall, right? And so one of the aircraft rescue firefighting guys at the airport, he came up with a slogan, and it was, a mistake may have brought you into this life, but don't let it take you out of it. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
That's really consistent.
Yeah, right? It's consistent. Okay, so you find yourself in the DC area now. Now your wife's still up in Baltimore. You're commuting back and forth.
Yeah. The trains between Baltimore and DC make it a
it's so nice, isn't it?
Job. Yeah.
So nice.
I literally had the same commute coming from Baltimore that somebody in the DC suburbs had time-wise. So I would leave my house in the morning, drive to the BWI train station, half hour to Union Station, and either walk or take a couple metro stops over to the airport or to the FA.
I had not avoided BWA, but it just turned into one of those things where, I'm probably a creature of habit. I'm like, okay, I got congressional meetings. I know Reagan. I know how to get in the car.
Yeah.
I know. But we had actually a meeting with AOPA up in Fredericks, Maryland. And so we went into BWI last year and went up and then came down on the train. But it was such a nice experience. Yeah. It was so nice. Yeah, I mean, they really have it down over there with the mass transit. That's beautiful.
It was nice to be able to switch a job, work in DC, not have to move to Bethesda. The price differences, the housing was dramatic. Yeah. I liked Baltimore anyway, and I didn't want to move, and the train made that possible, and it was inexpensive. And so it was good. It was good to do that. And after 4 years, that program was kind of winding down.
Yeah.
They were doing some reorganization in the FAA. So I stepped out of that, and I went back to my employer at Signature.
Oh, you went back to Signature at BWI?
Yeah. So I went and I met up, and at the time, my boss was still he was running Signature.
Yeah.
And his former boss was at the airport. And so I just had dinner with them, and I was like, I would love to work at BWI again. I'm going to take all this 4 years of safety experience I had and talking to people from all over the world and aviation. Right. And really wanted to apply it to the airport operations that I had experience with. Yeah. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be among the first person or the first group of people to apply these aviation flight. I mean, mostly it was flight, but it was air traffic. Like the stuff I did with the FAA was really not focused on the ground operations. And I thought, well, that is something that should change, right? So I thought, well, let me see if these concepts can be applied to aircraft fueling, towing, hangaring. We did passenger service. We ran the fuel farm. We did everything there. Yeah. And so I got the job as a safety manager for Signature, and at the time, Signature and ASIG were sister companies, so we still had everything at the airport. We were building a hydrant system. We had, as I mentioned, we had 100 airports at the FBO. We had every single drop of fuel in the airlines. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. And so I was the safety manager for that. And it was I got promoted to the regional safety manager a year later. And a year after that, they made me the general manager of the FBO. Right. Kind of again. Yeah.
Well, and I'll say this too. Kudos to you. Another lesson for the younger adults that listen to our podcasting. Not burning your bridges and being like, I see you when I see you, because rolling out the door.
That was without saying that aloud, but I should say it aloud because not everybody has that mentality.
Right.
Absolutely. So, give your notice, be respectful. Anyway, so I did that, and within 2 years, I had 2 years of safety experience, and then I was the general manager again because they knew I had that general aviation background. Yeah, and that's when the Great Recession hit.
So we're talking 2008,
2007, 2009. I was the GM. Yeah. Wow. So they had brought in a new CEO, and it was kind of shaking up the Signature network. Yeah, which I think was great. And they opened up a director of global HSE, health, safety, environment. Yeah. So
I was just going to act like I knew what that acronym was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
why
I said it out loud.
HSE.
Basically, the director of safety for Signature globally. Yeah. It was the first time they were having this global approach. Yeah. And it was like I don't know. It seemed like a good fit for me.
Were they a global? Because I know that time period, even through the recession and stuff. I know you would know. I don't know how the lineage of Signature and acquisition and everything they were doing, but was there exponential growth during this period? I mean, maybe in the recession. I don't know, but you said global. So have you while you were away, while you came back, it's obviously they're up to over 250 locations now or something.
With the landmark and all that, that's happened since. At the time, we had about 90 to 100.
Okay, so there was a significant footprint for. Oh yeah. I'm assuming you're getting this role, right? Maybe you said that, but I'm assuming that's the role you got.
Yeah,
right?
I got that role. So that's So the CEO created this position.
Yeah.
I was a good fit for it.
Yeah.
I was a GM. I had a safety background. I had some FA experience. I had some international experience, and I already worked there.
Yeah. It's perfect.
So I was hired in that role, and so we had about 90 or 100, and we had about 10 or 20 facilities that we didn't own, but we co-branded.
Yeah.
But most of them were owned.
Yeah.
And about 20 of them were in the Europe, and the other were in the U.S.
So you found yourself bouncing, because that had to be, I mean, maybe not Europe, but it's always interesting to me. We had some folks when I worked in the Pittsburgh airport go to China, and they're like, we're going to, see what they're doing regulatory wise and adopt it here. And I'm like, okay, but you can't, like whatever things like water slides in the term, whatever it was, I'm like, okay, but it's different, right? I mean, you can't. So did you struggle at all with standards and norms, or Europe, I don't know, you would know. Is it pretty similar?
No, it's pretty different.
Oh, it is.
The only FBO that was really something you would, in Europe at the time, and I don't know what's changed since then, but at the time, there was really the traditional FBO model in the U.S. was pretty rare over in
it was
because for the most part we didn't fuel. We were basically.
I have heard that.
Basically, we're like what you might call flight supervision.
Like,
we would manage the passengers and the interaction with the general aviation pilots.
Yeah.
But then when they said they wanted fuel, we would call the fueling company, Shell.
Right, yeah.
And if they wanted a GPU, we would call, Heathrow Airport Services or whatever.
Right.
I mean, we had very small examples of where we did that ourselves.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the general model is very different outside the U.S.
It's that it's interesting because, and thank you, you're giving me so many nuggets that I forgot about. But I have heard that too. Is that like a labor? Is it like contracts? Is that why it's developed that way? Is the airport like, no, we're going to maintain that service, or the fuel providers, or was there another reason why it really developed into that model? I'm just because it seems to make a lot like the model we have here, and I know you know what you're grown up with, but it seems logical that if you're doing the above wing stuff, that the below wing stuff would naturally flow with it. Is it just it is what it is? But
I mean, I see the value or the logic in both models. For the European model and outside the U.S. model, it's not that uncommon. I don't know the history of why it became that way, but I think that it did make sense in the sense that, like, if you are a good fueling organization, it doesn't matter if you're fueling a Gulfstream or an A321 or whatever. And, if you can outsource that to a company that has the fuel trucks and has the fuelers.
Right.
And here's one big difference that I do think that the European model, I'm just calling it the European model, but the non-US model is that their fuelers were full-time middle-class jobs.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
It was like being a truck driver. It was like that level of status. When you go to the airports, the fueler is the senior person in many ways on the ramp.
Okay.
In the U.S., we were hiring people almost at minimum wage.
Yeah.
I
was a fueler. That's what I got paid.
Yeah. Right. Isn't that?
Yeah.
And so we're paying some, like Philadelphia was a good example. Like it was, I don't know if it's changed them, but they didn't have a hydrant system. So we were hiring people for $12 an hour, $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And driving a 5,000 gallon fuel truck.
Yeah.
Weaving in and out of. I mean, it's a high skilled job.
Yes.
And in Europe, they were really treating those employees in a way that they were stable middle class jobs. And so it sort of maybe that made sense
Yeah.
in that way. It doesn't mean that we can't have that same, there's plenty of people that have that as well. It's just, it's not something you start with.
Right. No, it is interesting because, especially in the U.S., most airports, and I was just talking about this on the last episode with My Not, not French.
Why not?
Why not? Why not? Is you don't have to have a CDL in this country, because you're on airport grounds, you're not driving it out on the road. And, it's interesting the way you describe it, because I've been places where, somebody gets a CDL, right? Like I've been in an FBO where someone takes it upon themselves to go do the CDL and then they leave because they're like, why would I drive the fuel truck here? To your point about Europe, where I could go, drive a truck on the road in the U.S. and, make 4, 5, 6 times as much money. Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't look at it from that perspective. But so you're in this new role.
Yep, I moved to Florida because that's what you did back then.
Was your wife was okay with Florida?
We were, and the kids had been to Florida.
Oh, that's great.
They were young, obviously at the time. They were all under. I think the oldest was 8 or something, and the youngest was 2. Yeah. So my wife and I and the 3 kids moved to Central Florida. Now it was 2009, so there were a lot of cheap houses in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of empty neighborhoods.
I was in Florida in 2009, so I might have seen your planes in Michigan, and then I passed you again, like ships in the night.
Yes. So I remember going and looking at these houses that, had been built in the previous decade.
Yeah.
And were just thrown together in big open areas, and 1 out of every 3 was occupied, and the other 2 were foreclosure. It was kind of a scary time.
Yeah.
But we did buy a house in a stable neighborhood just north of Winter Park, and it was a neighborhood that I don't think I could have afforded without that downturn.
Oh, yeah.
So after it came back, it was a nice experience, and I was there for a total of 5 years.
I wish. And at that point in my life, it wasn't even about being stupid. Like when I was younger, you see things you're like, oh, I should have got in on that. I knew then, I was like, this is going to come back. And I remember in particular, my mom moved down there, and the house next to her was a foreclosure on a canal, and they were selling it for like 150 grand. And I was like, I want to buy it. And I had nothing. I had no money. And she sold her house 4 years ago. The house next to her sold for like 800 grand. Mm-hmm. And I'm like,
yep.
But, oh, well, that's the story of being poor. But so 5 years in Orlando. So Signature has always had their corporate headquarters in Orlando. Is that, I didn't know if that came later in time, but I know it's there now. But it was when you were there, obviously, right?
Yeah, they were downtown. They were downtown Orlando. They've since moved out to Lake Nona, I believe, out near the airport.
Okay, is that Orlando Executive? Is that the airport?
No, it's the International MCO.
Oh, the right MCO. Oh, so their headquarters is near MCO then. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And before that, they weren't at the downtown airport. They were literally downtown.
Just an office building downtown.
Building,
okay.
I think the 7th floor, 10th floor, or something like that. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was a great experience. I enjoyed living there for those 5 years. But they were, at the time, there was a move to kind of create a second headquarters in DCA, and I kind of jumped on that opportunity.
Wow, yeah, that's at DCA. That's where they
the FBO.
The FBO. Okay,
there's like a second floor above that.
Yeah, because that's the old terminal, right? At DCA,
it's the end of the hangars.
Okay.
So if you're if you're on street side looking at the terminal, it's all the way on the right.
Okay, because I thought, and I have seen it when I drive up to get dropped off to my where I go to get on the plane over by United.
Yep.
But there's I thought the old terminal they were using as an FBO at DCA. Maybe I'm way off on all this, but it looked like a one level. And I thought somebody told me like, oh yeah, that was the old commercial terminal, and now they use it for the FBO. But you would know, and I wouldn't. Yeah, I was just told street knowledge.
There's a series of hangars down on the right side, kind of the south side of the airport. The last one is the FBO.
Okay.
And then like next to that's like the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And I think there's Homeland Security. I don't know. There's a few other hangars there that change. But the very last one is the Signature. It's one hangar. It's the office, and then there's a couple of corporate offices upstairs.
Okay.
And so that's when I moved to Ithaca, and I was commuting because I was traveling all the time anyway.
Ithaca, New York?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be geographically challenged. That's a distance,
It
right?
is, yeah. It's
okay.
It's a 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
But we moved there because that's where we had been spending our summers because that's where my wife lives. And
or like her family is.
Yeah, so we still had a small place in the Baltimore area from when we lived there that I was renting out.
Yeah.
So I just expired that lease.
Yeah.
And I lived there during the week or I would travel.
Yeah.
And then, we were creating we were getting the kids into high school. The oldest was in high school there.
How was their transition from Florida to upstate New York?
I think the oldest was, he had the most friends because he was in middle school at the time.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a shock. I don't think the 2 younger ones had as much of they were moving back to grandma and grandpa.
Right.
And they had some cousins in the area and they had been there. But I think that when we looked at housing prices in DC and the fact that I was traveling as much as I was, it just made more sense to be around family.
Yeah.
So
sense.
It did suck that, in the sense that I had to, drive down and spend as much time away from home as I did. But after about a year, my boss left. We were in the process of selling ASIG, which was the commercial side.
Yeah.
We were kind of redoing all that.
That's the one that went to Menzies, right?
Yep.
Because when I was in Pittsburgh, I was there during that transition, and it went from ASIG to Menzies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were starting to look at Landmark.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on. The CEO, of the flight support division had been that reorganization. My level of management was kind of fading out.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to move back to Florida.
Yeah.
So I kind of phased out at that point.
Yeah.
So that was the end of my 10 years, second career at that company.
I'm assuming they probably have something like a 403B, like for retirement. Do they have like
401k?
401, so you got a 401 there. I'm assuming you just, through your stints going back and forth, you just started adding back to it.
Yeah. So let's get into the personal finance portion of the show.
Yeah.
Yes,
let's pull out your wallet, please.
I would I think that this is a good for any people starting off. Like I had my first 401k at the company in Lansing. Yeah. And I think, after 3 years making peanuts, it was probably less than like $2,000. But, I think for people that are like, oh, well, that's not enough, I'm going to cash out. Like you keep doing that and you won't have a nest egg. Yeah. So I have always rolled everything into a IRA as I leave companies. I just take the 401k, put it in. Okay. That's great. Yeah. And I think that people may be in a mindset where like, well, once I make big money, I'll start saving. Well, at that point, your multiple's gone. Yeah. Right. You're already 48 or something. Right.
Well, and I think it's great advice too, because so often now, I mean, probably when we were coming in the industry, it was more, I don't say taboo, but there were, everywhere I went, it was kind of changing, but there were people that were there for decades, right? But the retirement changed too, right? Like there were a lot of pensions back in the day. Yeah. And, at least myself, I wasn't really every time I came into the organization, it usually shifted, right? It's like, well, we're not going to do that, but we'll do this. And so, I think it is important, especially if if your employer's contributing to it, usually there's a timeline attached to it, right? And when you get to keep at least all of it or a partial of their contribution to so here, like I have a 403, but same. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great advice because some people think like, oh, but if I'm only there a few years, I'm going to lose it. No, you just roll it into your own private.
And you will be amazed at what time does to that money.
Yeah.
Time is the exponential on your personal finance journey. Yeah. And I think that too often people think, well, it's only going to be a couple $100 a month. That can't add to much. Well, that's literally what adds up to everything.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's funny. I did have to forget this, but every time I go to DCA, because you're talking about your offices there, I'm always like surprised at, it seems cool, neat, but like, the airport offices, they're like off to your right, and it almost looks like something maybe you'd see in Georgetown or something. Like they got these old brick buildings, and it almost looks like maybe a college campus, whatever it is, right? And I'm like, it's just like airport maintenance. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But it's a cool spot to be. You had mentioned your wife; she's gotten jobs everywhere. You've gone as well. Like she got the job first in Baltimore, right? And you followed her to that area.
Yep. Yeah. So she worked for, she's in public health. So she worked for Health and Human Services for a while, which is outside Baltimore. Yeah. Medicare, Social Security, that stuff. Yeah. And then Johns Hopkins is a university in Baltimore. So she actually, while we were living there, worked on her PhD. So
that's fantastic.
when we moved to Ithaca, she got a job. It's basically a college town there. There's Cornell and Ithaca College, and so she was, while I was working in DC that year, she was looking for a role up there. And actually, as I was phasing out of Signature, she was starting her career at Ithaca College.
Yeah.
And so really at that point, I'm in a random small town in upstate New York.
Right. And your family's all still back in Michigan, your side of the family.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It took a little while to get where I am now.
Yeah.
I've been there 11 years now, but the first few years I was working down at, I got a temporary gig at the Tech Center, which is in Atlantic City.
Oh yeah, with the FAA. Yeah, with the old tester.
Yeah. The R&D division needed a safety program.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted somebody with a CSP, which is a certified safety professional. Which is, it's like getting a CPA if you're an accountant or whatever. So
is that certificate offered? It's
the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. So it's the kind of the gold standard for. It's not specific to aviation.
Right, but okay.
Yeah, so if you go to, a professional National Safety Council or whatever, those speakers will generally have a CSP, unless they're a specialization in industrial hygiene or something. But it took me several years to get it. I did it while I was in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I had the system safety stuff from my FAA experience.
Yeah.
And I really wanted the generic, I'm not just managing aviation risk, I'm managing people falling out of de-icing buckets and running into airplanes with vehicles or slip and fall. I mean, all the stuff that affects people, not just once they leave the ground. So that's why I did that. So anyway, this is what they were looking for. It was again serendipity. They were looking for somebody with an aviation background that was also a CSP and available.
Yeah.
So the downside, it's also 5 hours away. Right.
And I think it's still, I don't know if it still is, but I think the claim to fame there, right, is it was the only airport the FAA actually ran themselves.
Yeah, they own it. And they now have, it's a fantastic facility with a lot of cool research going on there. Yeah. But that research has risks itself. And I think it was just it was a good experience for me because I was applying those knowledge. It was aviation, but nobody was flying. They were testing materials, but they were setting things on fire. Right. They were using, the avgas replacement project. Yeah. A lot of it's there. They were testing new batteries. And so a lot of that stuff was laden with risk. And my job was to help them put a thing together to manage that risk. And so that was a good, I did it full time for about a year. And then I kind of did a really once a month I would go down, and that was more of a consulting I was an FAA employee for about a year. And then after that, it was, the heavy lifting had been done, and I just transitioned to a part-time consulting. Yeah.
Is that, this would have been around, I'm trying to, in my mind, you said 11 years, so it's like 2011, 2012, where would this have lined up?
I was in Florida then. Okay. So I started with the Tech Center in 2016.
Okay. Yeah. And then you're there about a year, and then you were consulting, and then you said you've been with West Star for 11 years. So this is pretty close when you.
No. Okay. I've been in Ithaca for 11 years.
You've been in Ithaca.
Yeah. So I just passed my 4-year anniversary. So the only thing between the Tech Center and starting West Star was I worked as a consultant. So no more consultant jokes.
Oh, hey, whoa.
With FBO partners. So that is.
Let's get back to your finances.
Yeah, right. FBO Partners is a consulting firm for FBOs, as you might guess, and I was the safety guy. I was, there was somebody doing marketing and fuel sales, consulting, customer service consulting, and I called the guy that ran it, Doug Wilson, who I'd known at Signature. Yeah. And I said, I want to go into the same line of work, but rather than create my own brand and my own consulting, presence in the industry, how about I join yours and I'll bring all the safety experience and round out. Yeah. And it worked great, and for 3 years, I basically had replaced my income and was doing work for all kinds of FBOs around the country.
No, it's interesting because I love going through kind of your process to this point, but it seems like, and maybe you'd correct me here, at the beginning, was safety wasn't. It seemed like you wanted to be in aviation, right? And safety formed over time.
Yep.
Because you really you seem like now the safety expert. With through all your steps, it just kind of was it through interest in that side of it that you're like, yeah, because it seems like it became a theme of your jobs.
For sure. So I think so my first safety job was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
When I went to the GAIN thing.
Yeah.
And with the couple of years where I was a GM, everything since then has been safety. But I would argue a GM is a safety role.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So it very much needs to be very consistent with my philosophy. If you think that the safety guy is in charge of safety, you're missing the whole point.
No, that's but the thing for me that's interesting about it, especially people that talk to me about careers and like if you start right out, right, and I've had some friends that they want to work for the NTSB. They're like, I want to focus on safety but it's interesting because like being a GM, right, you could also say I've seen people who have gotten into that, right? And they're like, I love, doing the deals and getting the leases together and the business side. And, or also too, I have seen general managers that were moved up from like a line guy, but they love the fuel and they love to be on the ramp and they love that, like, I can stack a hangar better than anybody, right? But so it's interesting to me, especially, by the podcast with you being on it, is that was like I don't know if it's the aha, but it was, I like this part of the job. Because as a general manager, you're right, safety's always, it's part of my job, but it's not all the job, right? And so it's interesting to me that, and cool too, that becomes like, that's where I really want to focus my energy is on the safety aspect.
I think some of the reasons that it's been such a draw for me personally, it's a huge challenge to get people's mindsets to evolve over time when none of them report to you.
Wow.
Like, I have to figure out ways of influencing people. I have a few direct reports, and I did at Signature too, and on other jobs. But really, the effectiveness of somebody in a role like mine, is influencing the people that are in charge of every base.
Yeah, right.
And if they are blowing me off because I don't know what the heck I'm talking about, or I don't have any clue about what they're doing as managers, or that I have no sense of what a budget is or what it's like to keep a customer, I'm not going to speak to them in a way that resonates.
Right.
So I think that my operational background has been a real benefit. I can put myself in some aspects, in their position and understand what kind of messages would resonate with somebody that is responsible for delivering a budget on time.
Right.
And really help them understand that if safety is not going to be, if you are not going to pay attention to safety while you're doing all these things, safety will pay attention to you, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. That's a good message, but it's a real message because I'm not going to sit here, on a high horse and be like, I always know. I mean, a lot of times, I don't want to say lip service, but like, safety's always top, but you get so consumed. And your example is perfect. If you're a property counter, you're doing something like that, and your day-to-day job is, I got to get this report in and, whatever it might be. And so it was funny because that same panel at Nabisco, there was a great example from someone who was running a 135 operation. It was someone who was in the office, like an accountant type role, but they had someone like you who was championing the message. And with their SMS, they said that this person their job had nothing to do with the airplanes. They were an office employee, but they were walking through the hangar, whatever part of their daily, wherever they had to go through the hangar. And one day they heard clicking and hissing, and it ended up being like a broken gas line. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey, who knows? Maybe it was nothing, but maybe it could have been something big too, right? So they got somebody in to fix it, but without someone like you, I don't even think the moral of the story from the presentation was if it wasn't for someone like you, it probably wouldn't have even been in their head. Like, it's something off, or like, this isn't my area, so.
Right. I hope the safety person finds that when they're here next year for the audit.
You're right.
Like, in the meantime, you have a year of gas leaking into the hangar.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But yeah, if you can kind of, I don't use this term a lot, but like figure like if I can sort of mentally deputize a portion of everybody's brain.
I love that, yeah.
And say, look, I'll come out to visit your site once a year, or the auditor will, but ultimately, it's your base, they're your employees, it's your customers' airplanes, it's your relationship with the airport. If you don't report or fix that thing that's wrong, it's going to eventually, maybe tomorrow, maybe next month, maybe next year, but it's a bad thing's going to happen. And yes, you can't guarantee that every action is going to eliminate that the next thing is going to eliminate that incident.
Yes.
What you can do is to say that it's less likely. There's less risk. That is definitely true. So I think sometimes people are like, well, if I do X, then Y won't happen. And I don't think that's correct. What is true is if I do X, the chance of Y is lower.
Right.
If I put, anti-slip, things on the steps, people can still fall.
Right.
But it's less likely. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you should keep doing it.
No, absolutely. So I love to talk about firsts. The last episode, the first was first time I've done it in a car. This is the first time I needed a bathroom break in the middle. But it's been so interesting, and I've been sitting here. I'm like, you know what? I shouldn't have drinking all that coffee before I came in. And so now that we're back, thank you, Patrick, for letting me go and use the facility. But we were talking about safety. We're talking about really your role in transitioning from really being a consultant, right? So did you know these people when you got into consulting with them? I'm assuming they started a new consulting business, right?
So the guy that started FBO Partners, who's very much still in the industry, his name is Doug Wilson. I worked with him at Signature on a couple of projects, and so we'd stayed in touch.
Yeah.
And when I decided to start my consulting, I had really two options. I just start a new brand and, invest in the marketing and create a website and all that stuff, or join his organization, which it's not like he was hiring. This is me making my own luck, right? Like I just called up and said, you know my background, I've spent my career in basically mostly FBO safety. Yeah. And I think I'd be a great addition to your team because everybody else is doing consulting on other things. Yeah. It was a perfect fit. Yeah. So I joined and I was getting clients right away, and I got some certifications. Like I'm an ISBA auditor, and I did my OSHA 10-hour training. So I'm a trainer. So I could do things for the FBOs in addition to the experience that I had previously had. So I was, FBOs might call me up and say, hey, can you put together a training package, all the way up to, can you help us implement SMS in a real way, and audits. I did online safety officer stuff where I was like kind of doing the monthly safety meetings for all these companies that didn't have the experience or the time to do them, basically keeping their safety system intact. Yeah. For a much lower cost than going out and hiring. Most FBOs, as you know, are not huge, right? They don't have a dedicated person per location. So it filled a niche.
So your target audience was the FBOs for your consulting business that's great. Did you happen to, maybe you can't divulge, but I'll ask, did you happen to work with Signature as a client, or did that not happen?
No, and it really wasn't. They were a client of FBO Partners, but they have a whole infrastructure. Of
they had you
people.
For a long time.
They did, yeah. And some of the people that I worked with are still there. And so they wouldn't have been I was really targeting the FBOs, kind of like the one in Lansing, right? Like that had the risk, that didn't have the budget or the scale of operations to have a full-time safety officer. So somebody would be doing it without the background that I had. So it was a kind of a win-win. I got a little bit from a whole bunch of clients, and they got the access to somebody that could help them, guide them, through their safety journey.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that went for 4 years. Is that?
Yeah, about that.
Are they still consulting now that you've left, or did they?
Well, FBO Partners is still doing it. They're not doing the same sort of work that I was doing.
Okay.
But they're still around doing it.
Okay.
Doug, I don't think is actively doing it. He did take a full-time job, as I did with West Star. But it was a great 4 years or so, and made a whole bunch of new friends.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's always exciting, especially in that industry, because it sounds like our paths are somewhat similar in the sense of different jobs within the industry and understanding different, I like this aspect or whatever it might be. But with the podcast, that to me is kind of not the consulting thing, but something that you're like, oh, for me, I want to say the first time probably in this career, that's something where I can, shape it to whatever I kind of really want or work with, who I want to work with, that type of stuff. And so I think there's something very liberating about that, especially in our industry where everything's very regulated all the time. And yeah, to your like great companies we've both worked for. But, you're always a part of a system, and I do like the thought of, being a part of something, especially that where, you're a few of you and you're, deciding, well, maybe we want to work with this group, maybe we don't want to, whatever it might be, and I feel that here. So I think it helps with the creative juices of your brain. So you're in Ithaca. What made you, I jumped this earlier. Now are we jumping to West Star?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just over 4 years ago, and I was happy with the consulting, and I was generating sufficient income to do it. And again, I wasn't working in a bastion of aviation opportunities. Right. There was a small airport there, and that's about it. But I saw an ad, right? Like there was a company called Jet East. Was hiring a director of safety. And it was an amazing opportunity. I had heard of Jet East, and I didn't know much about him, but the CEO was fairly new and was building his team. And really the safety function was kind of the last piece of the team that he was assembling.
I don't know Jet East. It's an MRO?
Yeah, it was. It primarily did overnight maintenance for a fleet operator you've heard of, and then a lot of AOG, which is where it started. Okay, so they were the largest AOG team. Okay,
this is based out of New York, upstate New York.
Well, Jet East was out of the Trenton area.
Oh, okay.
And the CEO that had been brought on the previous year, that was kind of rebuilding it, and the company had been purchased by Gamma Aviation.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so we were part of the Gamma Aviation organization. That new headquarters was outside of Cleveland.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of the senior team were living. And that's still where the CEO works and several of the senior team members work.
Okay.
So I was brought on. I didn't know any of the members of the team, but they you're only 1 degree of separation. So actually, it's funny when I was doing an interview, the CEO, his name is Stephen Maiden. We had just met because we hadn't crossed paths up until that point. Yeah. And he saw that I worked for Signature. He goes, well, who is your boss there? And I told him, he goes, well, that's a very good friend of mine. What would he say about you? I said, I don't know. He said, you should ask. Right. Yeah. And he did, and I got hired. So, it must have been a positive
It must have been, yes.
But another point to your
point earlier, right.
You burn bridges, I may not have ever known why I didn't get that opportunity if I didn't have the reference that I got.
There has been some jobs in my portfolio where, I'm like going out in a blaze of glory would be fun. It is always wise to take probably the high road. And the same, I think, especially as you're coming up and through your career, there's, there's things you learn from everybody and even about yourself and how to maybe change, some of the stuff. And I think it's interesting because I've always probably been more of a blunt person up front, when it comes to especially like if an airport's doing stuff that I think is ridiculous. Because it is. We have to work with a lot of tenants like yourself, right? And especially if you were in like a middle level management part of an airport and, you're working with your FBOs, your MROs, your cargo operators, your fuelers, whatever it might be. If there's bad decisions being made at the top and you have to be the one that goes out and is like, hey, no, this is good. I always found it very hard to do that. But you learn, you learn things from everybody. You learn maybe what you don't want to do. You learn some stuff that maybe you should do differently. But it is a valuable lesson, even if it's a position you're like, I'm never going back there again.
Well, you don't know where that person that you may wish to give some sort of middle finger to out, that person isn't going to be in that job forever.
Yeah, right.
They may be working for... But it brings me to a point about like, it isn't necessarily the organization that you work for that's the most important. It's the person you work for and the people you work with.
Right.
And of course, good organizations will attract those kind of people.
Right.
But I think that if anybody's ever in a situation like that, I really always wanted to work for X company or X organization, but my boss is a total psycho and is beating me down and withholding me. Like, that is just not a recipe for success. Yeah. And I've always just signed on to that saying that you've probably heard, which is, you want to work for, having the right boss is extremely important, especially early in your career. Yeah. It can really set you back if you're getting, bad advice. Oh, yeah. You're not given the right opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny because when you start your career, you assume it's going to be linear, and then you start zigging and zagging, right? Like, I'm just going to go straight. It is. There's a pride thing with it. There's an ego thing with it, right? And I've been fired in the past, and it's one of those things where it does. You're like, oh my God. And then, like I said, I think if you learn from everything, everything can be a valuable lesson. And it's funny because, I'm at a point in my career where I know they have a lot of people that I have worked with, that have worked for me, that have been peers. And I think you have a mix. I think my ratio is most like working with me. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be a list that I'm on the bad list. But, especially as you get later, because I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I'm like, I think where I struggle with, especially if you were supervising people, is, if someone is a decent person, you know what I mean? And maybe they're just a bit of a muck up around, they mess some stuff up here and there, but they're not intentional about it. And, they need guidance. And I think that's, it's probably a weakness, but also, I was talking to somebody a couple months ago at a conference, and they're like, at this point in my career, it doesn't faze me at all. I love firing people. I'm like, I don't ever want to be that person,
That's a good sign to retire.
Yeah, right. I'm like, yeah. I was like, I don't know. I mean, it's not. I know sometimes in this world it's called for or whatever, but it is. It's a difficult thing because I think I look at somebody and you can tell. I think you seem like you have this personality where you're good with people. You have that connection, and you can, at this point in our lives, you can tell usually if it's bullshit. Or if somebody is meaning to do the right thing, but whether there's personal stuff going on in their life, and it's like, okay, I would rather be that person now and be like, how can we work towards it? Obviously, if there's big egregious stuff, you can't get around that. But if it's just like missing some deadlines and, like in your world, doing the safety stuff, they're like, okay, well, you messed up, but here's, and, I remember when I worked at the FBO, I was fresh and know you were talking about where, you hire somebody off the street. This happens to be Jeff Miller making whatever, $5-6 an hour. And I probably in the first 2 or 3 months, I accidentally backed Lear 25 into the hangar and, didn't really understand the significance of the cost, but it bent the aileron. And I think at that time, $6,000-7,000 to replace. But they didn't fire me, and they trained me and said, hey, here's, what you did wrong. My radio was turned down. I couldn't hear the guy behind it yelling at me. And but it was good. At the time, like, oh no, what am I going to do? You're young, you're impressionable. You're like, did I mess everything up for the rest of my life? Is this going on my permanent record?
My gravestone.
Yeah, right. He backed to playing into the wall, people, and never.
That's why he's in an open pit grave.
Spit on him. Go to upstate Michigan and spit on Jeff Miller's open grave. But yeah, no. I think that I don't even really go when I'm going with this tangent, but. I do the approach that you've had, and the person that on your end who says good things about you, that is worth so much in life, and that you have those people that see your value and what you put together. And I love that you're confident enough just to be like, call them and ask them, that you had that much of a relationship with them that you already knew what the answer was going to be. And that's a good spot for anybody to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And
so he didn't shit talk you. So you got the job. You got the job.
I did, and so it was November of 21. So at the time, Jet East was 350 people.
Yeah,
350 people.
That's a pretty good size, though.
It is a good size.
Yeah, that's a good size.
It's a definite. It was the beginning of an upswing, and I knew that was happening based on the conversation I was having. We were in growth mode.
It's 2016, right?
This is 2021.
Oh, 2021. Okay,
so 4 years ago.
2021.
Yeah, because I was doing the FAA Tech Center and consulting.
And then
kind of finding my way in Ithaca, right?
Which just is a good. 2021 was good for general aviation after. I mean, I say there's anything good about COVID, but there was a boom there. So now I'm in the right headspace.
We were on the upswing. Yep. Gamma had purchased Jet East. They had hired this. The Stephen Maiden was the new CEO. We were, we had built a component repair organization in Cleveland. We had the AOG success already happening.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of hubs for a large share company. Anyway, 350 people, and within a year or two, I think within 2 years, we were up to 700. So we were doubled at that point, or over 700. And, again, bringing in a safety person at that inflection point was super important because we were setting that foundation so that we're not lagging the things that you would see just as a normal portion of growth.
And this is a totally new role. It wasn't, you weren't filling what was vacant.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is another attraction for somebody in my position.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get to apply this accumulated experience and knowledge, with the leader that gets it. In an organization that needs it,
right?
In an industry that wants it,
yeah.
Right? I'm on board, right?
Yeah, right.
So we double up. We get close to 1,000 people at this point, and 2 years in, West Star, the company that owned West Star, purchased Jet East. From Gamma. And they merged it in with West Star, and that was just over 2 years ago.
Wow.
So there is no Jet East brand anymore.
Yeah, it's
all West Star. And I'm the Chief Safety and Quality Officer for the combined West Star organization.
Still based out of Ithaca for yourself?
Yeah, I have a small office in Ithaca with I have 2 people that I've hired since. But there's people at the big box locations that report to me as regional safety managers. Yeah. And then the auditing function also does.
That's great. So West Star now, I guess to for people listening, so your kind of base, where West Star's its headquarters is out of?
Well, that's a good question. So East Alton, Illinois, is the kind of the genesis of the organization that predated the name West Star. They way before my time purchased another company out in Grand Junction, which had the brand had the brand West Star. That company in East Alton, Illinois, bought the Grand Junction and adopted the name West Star, and then they grew, continue to grow up until 2 years ago. And now we're at 20 locations, including here at Chicago Executive. We have the 4 big box locations: Grand Junction, East Alton, Perryville, Missouri, and Chattanooga. We've got 4 satellite locations, including here. We got the hub locations for the fractionals, and then we have a handful of other locations, right? And things we do. But it's all business aviation. I mentioned we're the largest business aviation MRO.
Oh, I didn't know that. You are. Okay. In the United States or the world?
Probably the world.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, I was right.
Who
Yeah.
else is going to?
Right.
So yeah, the largest business aviation. I mean, obviously, companies that do this for commercial airlines is a different thing. But we're the largest business aviation. We only do business aviation. We only do turbine airplanes. We do basically everything. I mean, you could buy a Gulfstream or small jet, small turboprop, and you could have everything from, a new interior designed and built. We've got interior shops. We do all the normal A&P stuff. We have paint hangers, strip and paint hangers, from top to bottom.
Really? You do hangers?
What
that made me misheard.
No, we have paint hangers.
Oh, you have paint hangers.
Yeah,
I thought you were
we
just
don't
saying
build hangers.
Oh, okay.
We do build hangers, but we hire companies to do that for us.
Yeah, right.
No, what I was trying to say was that we have like full paint facilities.
Yeah, okay.
So we can, whenever there's, somebody buying a new airplane or a new airplane that needs a paint scheme, it's a big part of our business. But we do all the traditional, from AOG, light bulb fixed up to we need the whole airplane gutted and rebuilt, and including a new paint job.
Right. As someone who's never bought a new Gulfstream, yes. If I guess if you were to, so I know they do it around a little bit. They actually have a location down there, I think in downtown St. Louis with Gulfstream, right by East Alton, but. Let's say you buy a Gulfstream, Savannah, I think is the last location before they roll out, right, with Gulfstream, but you buy one, 70 to 78 million for a G800, right? I think is the going price, something like that.
Sounds
but
about right.
What you said, like the maintenance side to it. So I guess for me, and I actually kind of understand this, is Gulfstream not supplying the maintenance on an aircraft like that? Like they would go to a West Star facility to say like, okay, I bought this brand new plane. I need someone to do the maintenance management of it. Or are you seeing more, you've bought a used Gulfstream and you need a maintenance facility? I guess I'm just trying to understand. Is there like a warranty?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to deal with warranties, and that skill set of knowing what is warranty, what do we build, is beyond my knowledge.
Right. As long as it's done safely, right?
But as far as like, what's billed and whatnot, what are we authorized to work on? What does Gulfstream want to do on their own versus what do they... you've seen like the citation service centers. Like there's certain qualifications that you can get to be that. And it's a little more tied in with the manufacturers. Yeah. And then there's a lot that is just owner because, a 20-year-old Gulfstream isn't going to be, have any warranty, right, at that point. So, right. So, but there's a lot of nuances that I don't want to sort of, it's not part of my purview. So, but absolutely, we do have those relationships with the manufacturers. Yeah. And then, leverage that for the benefit of the customer.
Do you find in your portfolio when aircraft are being serviced by West Star, I guess, could it be set up in such a way that people have like pre-existing contracts with you? Like, whether it's like a 135, like if something breaks, your mobile maintenance is heading to it, or is it more like, people that listen to this aren't in aviation. Okay, Jeff Miller's driving home and his Ford Fiesta breaks down on the side of the road. Am I just flipping through the yellow book? Okay, not flipping the yellow book. Am I like doing a phone search? Like, who's the closest mechanic? Like, is that how people are finding their way to West Star? Or is it like a prearranged, hey, I bought a plane. If it breaks, you're my go-to? Or is it maybe both?
I mean, we have such a wide range of customers. So you pick a fleet, like a fractional fleet, which we have relationships with, and those are all contractual. And those are negotiated, and we'll work on every one of their planes within certain parameters. But it's AOG, for example, is whoever calls, we'll service. Right? And of course, it's just like I stayed at a hotel chain that I have a certain relationship with, but I don't stay at that hotel every single time. Okay. But I prefer it.
Yeah, right.
Some special things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have retail facilities that we might service once.
Yeah.
Of course, we want you to come back on the next
Yeah, absolutely.
inspection. Or
Right.
we want to change out the interior or get a new
Right.
avionics upgrade.
Yeah.
And the better we perform, the more likely that they won't go to a different competitor.
And that makes sense.
But the difference, if your analogy is that, I might go buy a Ford Fiesta,
Right.
and I won't know who to call to service but when you're buying an airplane, you have a maintenance. You already figured out who's doing your maintenance.
Right.
I hope, right?
Yeah, I would hope too.
You're going to spend $70 million. These are not going to be, well, now I got to figure out who to change the oil.
Right.
These are things that, given the nature of the investment into any airplane, those relationships will be, the major players.
Yeah.
So obviously there's always the sales end going on. There's always the marketing. We want to earn that business and we want to retain that business.
Yeah.
But it's a good analogy, but I think there's some key differences with an airplane that, you're going to know West Star.
Yeah, I guess, just in my own experience on the airport side to it, I have seen Gulfstream maintenance trucks, and in my mind, I think, okay, the car analogy may not work exactly, but it's the only thing I can equate to because I don't have Gulfstreams. But, for the first 3 or 4 years, I can go back to the dealership if I just bought a car and they're going to fix it under warranty. And then after that, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, where I was always kind of confused is if there's a new Falcon or whatever it might be that they have a partnership with you and say, yeah, you go work there, even if it's warranty, it's covered under your. But so with your network and the satellite locations, also another thing, my own edification to understand, like an airport like Chicago Executive Airport, where you have a satellite location, is the thought to do what is more maybe minimum maintenance, or at least get it to the point where it could be ferried to a larger location like East Alton if there's major work that needs to be. Is that how a satellite works, or are you doing more large scale things at your satellite locations that doesn't happen at?
Yeah, that's really dynamic. I mean, so for example, we have a fairly small facility in comparison to East Alton. East Alton has 600 employees.
Wow.
I think you have less than a dozen here.
Yeah, it's right about that. Yeah.
But this is a great resource for the people that are based here.
Yeah.
So that's a portion of it.
Right.
You might have a transient that we will service.
Yep.
We may have overflow. Let's say that there's a project that would normally be done out of East Alton or Grand Junction, let's say.
Yeah.
And it can't be done for, say, 6 weeks.
Right.
Maybe Milwaukee has an opening.
Yeah.
And it can be done here.
Yeah.
The big difference is the capabilities are different here than they are at the big campuses. So we're not going to be able to strip and paint your airplane here.
Right.
We're not going to be able to create your new interior here.
Right.
But there's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
And so it's really, there's a whole team of people that will say, somebody with a Gulfstream that says, I need some speed tape and a ferry permit so I can fly it from Chicago Executive.
Yeah.
And that's something that, may fit the qualifications of the people here. And if you're not at one of the 4 satellites, of course, that's what AOG is for.
Is that the mobile maintenance AOG?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's 200 or so people around the country from coast to coast that work from home. They have a West Star van, and they're on. When they're on, they get dispatched to go do whatever needs to be done at the county airport. And,
Is that what's that acronym? Oh, the French Riviera.
Yes.
Is that what's it stand?
Aircraft on the ground.
Aircraft on. Okay, AOG. Yeah. And so with West Star
or MRT is something we a mobile repair team.
Oh, okay.
It's the same concept.
Those are typically one person,
usually. Two people in a van. There's some exceptions here and there, but.
Two guys in a truck,
essentially, and they bring in whatever can fit in the truck.
Yeah, right.
Combined with maybe what the FBO has. Yeah. Possibly, hey, can we borrow your scissor lift, or do we have to go rent one?
Yeah.
Depending on the scale of the, and if it can't be fixed there, can it at least be made airworthy to file for a ferry permit?
Sure.
I mean, those are the challenges that these very skilled AOG folks do because they're not in a facility with 598 other people. Yeah, right. So it's kind of a different.
Does for West Star, is that like the mobile teams are what if you're in the lower 48? Is the thought you have as West Star captured all of that? Like if you're out there and maybe you have an aircraft and like, yeah, West Star seems like the right place. If you're in Washington or you're in Utah, do you guys cover the entire, every state you have a team that, so basically anywhere in the lower 48, you could have access to a West Star technician.
And I think that even if something were, I mean, just to know, we do sometimes fly people to, let's say, some island in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Obviously there's some, limitations to that. And I would assume that would easily apply to, but there's probably people in Hawaii and Alaska that may be a different option for somebody that needs that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, we have, again, 200 people, I don't know, something close to 100 vans, and they're parked at random places that people are living.
Yeah.
And if they have to drive 3 hours or 13 hours, it just depends on where the work is.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we have a 24/7 dispatch where you can call and you'll get an answer.
Yeah.
How long will it take somebody to get to my yacht? And if we're like, we can have somebody in 3 hours.
Right.
Or if we're like, look, it's going to be, 6 hours. And then the operator can say, well, there's another option. I need it before then. I mean, there's other AOG companies, obviously. But, we try to capture the work that we can, and we can't always do it.
Yeah. And if you are kind of back to the thought, even if it's like a one-off, like Jeff Miller has a King Air, and he's in my knot.
Yeah.
And I've never worked with you and something broke.
Sure.
I could call you up and say, hey, this is what's
Absolutely.
going on. And does West Star, is that derived from any significance, or is it just the name? I've always wondered if West Star.
That's a good question.
Okay.
I mean, it's what I do know. It is the name of the maintenance company that was started in Grand Junction.
Yeah.
That was adopted when it was purchased by East Alton. So.
Okay, because somebody asked me once about it, and that they had saw the name here.
Yeah,
and they're like, "Is it like it's because it's always, your North Star?" And I was like, "Well, no, because it'd be called North Star." And it's like
somebody took that already.
I think. But a lot of people, in aviation, right? Flying west and
go west, young man.
Right. Like it has
adventure.
Yeah, it feels that way.
You're going to the frontier,
right?
Of air.
Right.
So I think it's cool, and it was also kind of neat that I was at Jet East, which had more presence on the East Coast, and now we're part of West Star, and now it was a great mixture of those two geographical centers, not just the business operations. We were much stronger. Jet East had a much more advanced relationship with some of the fleet operators.
Yeah.
And AOG.
Yeah.
Whereas West Star was much stronger on retail and the big hangar facilities and the heavier maintenance.
Right.
Combined, it's fantastic.
Right. I would assume your job is, everybody's is, but I would assume yours too, with AI and stuff. Like you probably are able to access so much more data now on safety risk, safety assessments. Do you see things changing yet in that world for you? Are you?
It's going to be a slow change until it's super fast change. Right, my assumption. Like like right now, I think my team and myself personally, I'm dipping my toe in it. And I'm starting to understand the power. Yeah. It doesn't generate data. It just helps me analyze and understand the data. Yeah. The data that we get is different than, say, what an airline will get, because they have their flight data recording stuff. They have their automated data that the systems, like, not the same as black boxes, but that same digital data that is just downloadable for multiple parameters that can be analyzed. With us, none of those we're not operating an airplane. So our data really comes from our people. Which means that, we had to put in place a reporting system, a culture of reporting. Rather than react to an incident or an injury or a guy towing an airplane into the hangar.
Right, man, that guy.
That guy, right.
Get rid of him.
Still in the industry?
Yeah, fire that guy. Oh, I got to spit on his grave after this. Right. What about that?
It makes it even more important to implement SMS, because that is really foundational.
Yeah.
Is that if we don't get the mentality that, I'm going to report that gas leak in the hangar, it's not going to be known and won't have any data to work on until the hangar explodes. So the idea of generating data isn't what I would use AI for. It's now that we're successful in getting way more reports than we did in the past,
analyzing it.
AI can really help us understand that. And really hone in on what do we need to do now with this massive amount of data that we didn't have a couple years ago?
Yeah, I mean, even here, the fact that you can compute so much so quickly, and I always say, because there's some people that like a simple version of like saying ChatGPT, which is what, my first, using AI, now everybody's like, AI, that's AI, that. I'm like, okay. It's kind of like Microsoft Office, powered by AI. Okay, well, now it, for some reason, just puts my signature block above everything that I wrote. So I don't know AI. Okay. Somebody said to me, they're like, oh, that's cheating. I'm like, no, it's not. I was like, because here's the thing. I was like, if you're writing a report, you're putting something together and you're putting together a bunch of data, I was like, instead of spending an hour making it look appropriate, you write your stuff out, you run it through, and then you check it, and you're like, okay, but why waste your time on, data? Exactly, because we have a ton of data here that we pull in, and some of the analytics in the background now is working on some of that with things like ADSB and whatnot. But again, why sit through a CSV file yourself, and when you could look at a synopsis of it.
It's like doing long division with a pen and paper, because you don't think that calculators are here to stay.
It's a perfect example.
It's cheating by using a calculator.
Right. It's interesting, because it is, so much of our existence here is safety oriented from every aspect of it. In your case, you were talking about it made me think, are you, your role directly, are you more involved with safety risk of the operation? Like you had mentioned, someone getting hurt, an employee, or do you also have a role in kind of safety aspect of actual maintenance on an aircraft, like the end result that, obviously, everybody, A&P, probably, right, that's working on your aircraft, and they have the right certificates, all that stuff. But, I would assume, and I would just, you're working in an aircraft, that's a liability within itself. You're taking apart something. Or is that your role too? Do you oversee?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a concept that I've struggled with, and really, revealing in my own mind that these are really two sides of the same coin. You're dealing with safety risk. Do I really care if I'm saving someone's life working on the airplane or someone's life after they take off? And I think that it's, SMS is generally viewed as an aviation thing, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's just what we know, because that's what the requirements come down from ICAO and FAA. But if you look at, how safety is managed at a nuclear facility or a chemical processing plant.
Yeah.
They have different elements of it in different words, but it's really safety risk. I think that it gets segmented primarily because the FAA manages airplanes after they take off.
Right.
And OSHA manages worker safety when the airplane's on the ground. The FAA doesn't have anything to do with that. I'm dealing with both, and I care about them both. Yeah. And I have the same reporting system for both. Yeah. And I'm not going to segment, like I'm going to care about one, it's the same person I'm protecting, whether they're flying or not. So yes, there is, some regulatory differences on, environmental regulations and all that. But ultimately, SMS is neutral on what kind of safety risk. If you cause harm to people or property, then it's in my purview. Yeah. And if we keep, I'll pick an example. Let's say somebody is working on a tail of an airplane and they drop a tool. Yeah. And it falls harmlessly to the hangar floor. Okay, well, the same thing happens and it hits somebody on the head. Yeah. It's an OSHA thing. Right. The first thing might go unnoticed because nobody asked people to report near misses. Right? Yeah. Second time, you're going to get an OSHA report. Third time, it hits the wing of the airplane. The wing and the airplane takes off, and it has to do an emergency landing because something was dented. Right. All these things are from the same drop tool. Right. So am I only going to count it if it's an aviation thing, or if it's an OSHA thing, or if it's near miss? It's the same root cause of that incident. So I think it's important for success that we just don't try to segment, quote, different types of safety. We really have to address safety risk holistically. Yeah. Yeah. Especially in your side of the world, you see, and from everybody I've talked to, West Star, top notch is what I've heard through the industry, 100%.
but the reality is you do see some maintenance facilities out there that don't do or haven't done great work. Most of them don't exist anymore, and then you can see some of these accidents or incidents where maybe someone cut a corner. When I first started in Laredo, Texas, there was an accident that happened with United, and it was Continental at the time, and this was early 2000s, and it wasn't that somebody was doing something improper, nefarious, or anything like that, but it was a shift change. Yeah. And it was a shift change between two mechanics, and the supervisor came in, and they thought they were replacing I think the forwards on the horizontal stabilizer. Anyways, that one had not realized the other one already took the rivets off, and it fell off the aircraft. And so again, it is in this side of it. I've been in some of the paint factories. I've been in your facility here. I mean, it's amazing to me because you guys have to get it right 100% of the time. Yeah. Because it is. You're, up in the sky, thousands of feet, a lot of pressure on these aircraft. And so kudos to you and the team for, making it a safe, effective, especially for that end customer. And I love what you said about that it's all holistic and it's all, really together, whether it's the employee or the person on the plane after it leaves, because it is when you're up there. I say all the time, I'm very particular in an airplane that I would fly on who's working on it, because you don't get many second chances in aviation. And so it's funny. The episode to this previous with AOPA, he actually built his own aircraft, built RV, and I was like, I love flying, but I'll tell you what, if you told me these two hands worked on this plane, no, I'm good. I will pass on that.
Well, the industry has gotten so complex back in the days, let's say go back to the 50s or something, where it's like, okay, well, the machine is the most dangerous part because we were new to flying and pressurized airplanes and jet engines and whatnot. And eventually the machines got good. Yeah. And they were no longer the weak point, and humans were the weak point. Yeah. Right now, absolutely. It's the system itself is so complex that, we have good people, we have good machines, and bad things can still happen if the system is not accommodating to those imperfections of people. Yeah. So that in your example where, let's say, a pass down was missed, that is most likely, I don't know all the details, but let's say, there might have been an instant reaction, like one of the two people was a screw up and needs to be disciplined, where really I would look at it like we don't have a system of reliable pass down. It's funny because it's almost like you read the NTSB report. That's exactly what the NTSB said is you need a system to pass. Like, because nobody, they were trying to help each other out. And by helping each other out, information was lost, and then there was a shift change. And then, part of the criticism was, debriefing. And having that pass through. But, you read a lot of these NTSB reports and you're like, oh, that's where that came from. Or, like crew resource management. I think when the L-1011 crashed in the Everglades and, the captain was he took everybody else's attention away from the incident at hand. So your day-to-day, do you go to every location? Not every day, but you go all 20, but like your day to day, do you like say for like a week, do you find that you get out to all the locations at least once a year to put eyes on the processes, or how you said you have a team with two with you in Ithaca, but so I have a total of 5 regional safety managers. One of them is managing the safety at 9 of the smaller facilities. So he's based with me in Ithaca because that's where he was living already. Yeah. And the other 4 are at the 4 largest of our facilities. Yeah. So those 4 large facilities I definitely go to at least once a year. Okay. There's just random meetings. I mean, that's where like the senior managers go to when we're having a thing. Yeah. So I don't have to try to get to those 4 because that just happens organically. Yeah. Places like here at Chicago Executive, I'll come to once. I don't think that I'll need to come back at any frequency, but I'm here, so I'm going to go visit it. Yeah, makes sense. See what's going on. But I actually, after today, there's only one location I haven't been to, and that's Minneapolis, but I'll get there I don't need to take a special trip there, but I'll stop by at some point. But I've been to all the the West Star facilities, and I don't have a requirement to go to them at any frequency because they have direct support.
Right.
But when I am in the area, I like to stop and say hello.
Yeah, no, because your point about creating a culture, I think that goes a long way when it's just, oh, that's Patrick. There he is. Yeah. No D on the end of his name.
Yeah.
Anything else about West Star that I haven't asked you that you wanted to get out there?
Oh boy. Well, there's a lot. I mean, I think that, it's exciting being, and I mean, for me personally, it's like the culmination of the ability. I think most people want to affect change in their chosen industry.
Yeah.
And to be in a position where I have the ability to do that is so exciting.
Yeah.
And it's like everything I wished I had the platform to do, and I'm just trying to take advantage of it with changing they're making the positive changes that, I think I see in other areas of aviation, and West Star was already an industry leader. So I'm creating something new, but I'm creating the next chapter of our safety story.
Yeah. I'll say, like on the airport side to it, one thing that I see that you bring to the table, and there's definitely some folks that I've met, not only at West Star, that, it's so beneficial to like an airport operator to have that relationship and understand that perspective. In the past with different MROs, sometimes it's a hard industry to communicate to. And they're so busy with what they're doing that I loved meeting you, and I forget the other gentleman's name. He's since retired, but from West Star. But always very like open about like, hey, even if it's stuff like, hey, here's maybe something we could work on or work towards, So I do appreciate someone with your perspective and stuff being in that side of the world, because MROs especially, people ask me, oh, what is an MRO? I'm like, well, it's interesting because, unlike like an FBO or something, like as an airport operator, you probably deal with the FBOs. Well, I do. I deal with the FBOs a lot more than.
Yeah, a lot of them are landlords.
Yeah, right. And so, an MRO, you guys do come in effectively, efficiently do your job. And, so having some opportunity to kind of understand it even more for myself, because it is a bit of a mystery sometimes.
Well, I think there's two things that I wanted to, that your comment just sparked me to think about is safety has a certain aspect that's similar to maintenance. If it goes right, nobody thinks anything special happened.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's just expected.
Yeah.
The natural state of affairs is that nothing bad's going to happen.
Right.
And so I'm used to that.
Yeah.
And no one's going to praise me because nobody got hurt today, right?
Right.
But at the same time, when things go wrong, then that's where the experience and the challenge comes in.
Yeah.
The other thing is that maintenance is often just not noticed in general. Like our CEO is really has pushed this idea, like all of our shirts, if you ever see a maintenance shirt, you'll see a bunch of airplanes down, airplanes down the center of the back.
Oh, really?
Spine, right? So we're kind of like the backbone of the industry.
Yeah.
No one's airplane is maintenance free, right?
Right.
Even if they're working, like every maintenance makes the aviation system happen. Right?
Absolutely.
Not the only thing, but it's a essential part of it.
No, yeah.
And I think that, when I do periodically speak at various events, and a lot of times people they haven't heard from MROs.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, do you guys do SMS? Or do you think it's applicable? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, you don't think that we have hazards? That you don't think we should manage our risk?
Right.
Of course. And our people have a lot to say. And if we don't ask them for their input actively and act on it, then we're not going to be in a proactive position to make those positive changes. And so it's just, it's good management.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I was even thinking this the other day with the shutdown, and from your old role as an air traffic controller, that's very visible. You see this thing in an airport. It's indicative, right? Even when you start talking about, what is the airport and here, right? Kind of the center always becomes a tower, and that becomes a conversation. And I don't think I've heard anybody talk about like FAA tech ops and the ones doing the maintenance on the radars and the ones that are working without pay right now to keep, the Pappies on or the Vassies on, or, I think they still have VORs. We're getting a VOR. And I think you're right. In a lot of our industry, the maintenance aspect for everything is kind of in the shadows. But, I remember, I think I was going to DC. Not BWI. Maybe I'll go back to BWI, but I was going to DC. No, you know what? I actually was going to BWI. I actually was. It was the one time because I remember the tower. I don't know if it was when you were there, but the tower was like black. It was like a colored black at BWI. It was so cool looking. I was like, I've never seen a black tower. Like the paint on the outside. Anyways, I was on the plane. And I was sitting, the person that I was flying with was in front of me, and I was looking out the left side of the window, and I saw the first officer of the plane like pointing at the wing, and he was pointing to a guy, and then that guy left, and then they came back with another guy with, a safety vest on that said maintenance, and then he's like looking at it, and then he like walks away, and I tell George, I'm like, that's probably not good, and then two guys come back with two, safety vests on, say aircraft maintenance. Then they come back with a lift, and then the pilot gets on, and he's like, we got an issue on the left wing. And he's like, we're going to take a look at it. And it ended up being like paint chipping, but then they go up, and they have the iPad, and they take a picture of it. And, I told George, I was like, maintenance is not it's not a thing until it is, to your point, and the thing at that moment then with people on the plane was, oh my God. And it's like, well, no, you want to make sure it's safe. Mm-hmm. But two, to your point earlier, I was like, if something bad happens, nobody's going to enjoy that. Nobody on this plane is going to enjoy that. Yeah. And the family and friends that we have in this world aren't going to enjoy that. Yeah. And so, where it seems like, it's funny because like in that moment, it's like, it's an inconvenience. And it's like, well, it's working though. The pilot spotted something that he thought was an issue. The first maintenance guy's like, I don't know if it is. Let me get somebody else over here to look at it. Yeah. And it worked. It ended up leaving and it was fine. But,
you're still going to get from coast to coast in 5 hours.
Yeah, right.
5 hours and 10 minutes.
Right. It's better than getting in the Pony Express. Yeah, right. No, that's okay. I know I've kept you way longer than I promised that I would keep you. But it's been such an enjoyable conversation. Anything else on West Star before we?
No, it's. Okay. Thank you for asking all those questions, and I could talk about this industry for a long time, but it's certainly fun to talk to another interested podcaster.
Yeah, somebody referred to me the other day as media because they're like, I was like, okay, well, if you've listened to any episodes, I don't think it's that.
Yeah,
it's mostly Jeff's corner to gripe. Yeah. So you mentioned being potentially down the road, you might like to get into airport management, maybe?
No, I think that was earlier. My undergraduate was in public administration, and I have an MBA, and I had this experience, and I thought that would naturally lead to a job like yours, where you're kind of in this private industry, but in a public job.
Yes.
So I've gotten that. I joined. I was appointed to the local airport advisory board for Ithaca.
Oh, great! Yeah.
We have a little historical aviation. So I'm still using that.
Yeah.
In sort of a voluntary way.
Yeah.
I'm still helping run the local airport, but as an advisor on the board.
Yeah.
But I don't think. I think that the time frame from becoming, joining your sub area may have passed. I'm not ruling it out, but I also think that, there's just as you move on through your career, your effectiveness your most effective thing you can do to advance the industry changes.
Yeah.
Early in our career, getting this one airplane fueled, putting this one airplane online is the most effective thing.
Not backing it into a hangar.
Yes.
That's all that needs to happen.
We got you out of that.
Yeah, right.
But as you move forward, changing a larger group of people in a smaller way, becomes. So I think that, I'll continue to look for opportunities to just make sure that West Star Aviation is the best MRO it can be.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys do so many cool things. I've seen, a lot of the stuff with the students, and you're getting people involved because, that's another, I don't want to say, but crisis isn't the right word, but everybody talks about pilot shortages, but I think maintenance shortage
is crazy.
Right.
See the age distribution.
Yeah. Yeah.
The number of people coming in is not matching the number of people. It's a possibly a future crisis in the making. And so, one of the things we do is this academy, West Star Aviation Academy, where we hire people and we put them through 6 or 8 months of training with a partnership with an educational a school. But they're doing that work right on site, and they're hired then. We're paying them. So like the financial threshold to get into a school can deter people from getting into the industry. Yeah. And we're not solving the problem. We're just helping solve the problem. No, because it's a number of, like we do 25 at a time, but that's 25 people that would be changing oil at, the local auto place if they didn't have the opportunity to earn money while they're learning.
Yeah. And that's mostly in East Alton where that program is?
It is, yeah. Okay. And there may be opportunities later to sort of increase that outside of it. But right now it is all in East Alton. Yeah. And, I think that there's so many opportunities in aviation, and it's a great career being an A&P. I'm not an A&P myself. Yeah. But there are people that are making a great living and enjoy what they're doing. It's challenging. It's important.
So if you were a younger student and you wanted to get airframe and power plant, right, A&P, if you wanted to get your A&P from like here, Lewis University ones, Rock Valley College, I think it's what it's called, out in Rockford. Let's say they get their certificate. I think it's like out in Rockford. It's like 2 years. West Star's ready to hire. Is that how? I mean, you guys,
we're hiring. We're always in hiring mode. Yeah. It's just that there's so many that we might target. Our people department is always at conferences. Trying to hire people out of the military. Sure. We're trying to create new maintenance like this academy. People that don't have any experience, all they have is a desire. Yeah. Which is tough. Right.
Oh yeah. That's half the battle.
There are people that join us from other companies as well. Each one of these gives us a few percentage of what we need. Yeah. And so they're all important.
Yeah, no. Do you see yourself, let's say, if you didn't end up in aviation, where would you have ended up, you think?
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I don't know.
We could also talk about your finances some more.
I would be a Hollywood actor. No. Yeah, right. Well, probably I probably would have advanced my public administration. I probably would have been working at the Lansing State Capitol and I don't know. That's a great question. I never really thought of myself.
They probably could have used you over there. They need someone with some practical sense in that side of the world.
It's a different. I think that we all have a role in public administration, whether we're a citizen, a voter, or an elected official, or a member of the civil service. And so that is definitely not lost on me, and it's something I'm always interested in. And it probably would have been something I did if I didn't get into aviation.
Right. No, I think at the end of the day, and thank you for coming on and doing this. I say often, I think in our industry, we have unintended barriers. Because some people understand, right? Even here, they drive by, we'll go to the high school, and they'll see names like West Star on the side of the building. Yeah. They don't know what it means. Like they have a connection to like O'Hare, because like that's where I go, and I get on Spirit, and I go to Orlando to go to Disney World. But what is this? You know what I mean? And that you can have a good, high-paying job, be in this field, and be at an airport like the Chicago Executive Airport or any of the other ones that you named. Like, why not? But, be a part of the industry in a really cool, dynamic position for a great company like West Star. So I really appreciate you coming on and expressing that, because you're our first MRO. You're my first bathroom break. So thank you for allowing that to happen. And, if there's anything else you want to say, the mic is yours.
Wow. No, I think I'll leave it there. I think it was a good conversation. If you're listening to this and you thought aviation was not accessible, maybe you wouldn't be listening to this, but it is accessible. You have to take the first couple of steps sometimes, but there's always a need for people with a strong interest. To me, aviation is interesting to me because it creates the world that we live in. Without aviation, we would be an extremely poorer planet.
Yeah.
Poor and
absolutely.
I mean, poor in many ways, not just financially, but like we just wouldn't have exposure to other parts of the world, and we wouldn't have access to the things that we just need. So I think that there's a public benefit to aviation, but it's an exciting airplane. Things that go up in the sky are interesting also.
So much fun.
And it attracts interesting people.
It does. It does.
It's a dynamic industry that the world needs, and I would encourage you to look into opportunities. If you think that there's a role for you in aviation, I think you're wrong. But just keep looking.
No, I think that's such a positive message to send out there. The thing I love about our industry is I do think there's a humbling aspect that happens as you spend a lot of time in it. But to go and connect and realize it's not just your bubble, it's not just your town, your state, your country. Mm-hmm. It's a world, and it does. I often say this to everybody. I was like, I wish everybody had a passport and had to get out and go experience a different culture, and just, but we interconnect all that, and it's fun. People all the time, oh, you're at the airport? What is that? Are you the guy that waves the aircraft in? I was like, I used to be. I got canned from that. No. I was that guy. No.
When I told people I was an air traffic controller, they're like, oh, you're the guy on the ramp with the wands. Right. I'm like, well, I've done that.
I've been there. Yeah, I've been there.
Also important.
Yeah, right. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for spending over 2 hours with us today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me and using up all the tape that you are willing to invest in this discussion.
Thanks again.
Take care.
Well, what a great conversation we had there with Patrick, our second Patrick guest, Patrick 2.0 on the show. After we were done with the interview, we actually went over to the West Star location at Chicago Executive Airport, and West Star had a magazine there that talks about staff within the organization and different kind of stories. But I didn't want to share this because it didn't get into the podcast, but I thought it was really cool. So Jim Moylan, Patrick's uncle, he came up with the gas mark, which indicates the side of the vehicle where fuel tank is located. He was a Ford employee, and the idea came to Jim after he experienced frustration while filling up his company car, leading him to propose a fuel gauge indicator to help drivers avoid getting soaked by pulling into the wrong side of the gas pump. Ford adopted this idea in the 1989 models, and it has since been widely adopted by other manufacturers. It's funny because that little dash, I was dating someone at some point, I don't remember when or where, but when we were driving in, I remember they're like, oh, I hate this, I never remember which side of the car the gas tank's on. And I'm like, oh, there's that little doohickey, which is the official term, the doohickey there next to the fuel gauge, and forevermore, you never have to guess. So thank you to Patrick's uncle Jim for inventing that for us. But what a great conversation. Hopefully those of you out there have a little better knowledge of maintenance, repair, overhaul facilities, on how they are important to the aviation industry. I know that I learned a lot, and I always enjoy these conversations because I tell people I'm so fortunate that I get to talk with people in length about certain things that, the reality is I probably just wouldn't have as in-depth on. And now I have something further for the next time I'm dating someone and I'm talking about the doohickey in the car that tells you which side to fuel up from. But if you like that story, if you have other stories or anything you want to share, send us a message at dapodcast85@gmail.com. That's where you can request to be a guest, suggest other guests, say whatever you so choose. I'm actually working on the design right now for our first challenge coin, so trying to come up with something cool there. Along with the stickers, because people seem to be enjoying the stickers. I did get out, if you look at like our TikTok or anything, my first ride into this adventure with the Waco biplane, which is getting my tailwheel endorsement. So thank you to Gambit Aviation down in Aurora. I am training on their decathlon, and my flight instructor down there has been courteous enough with me when I was death gripping the stick because I didn't know how I was going to feel, but I felt really good. about flying in a tail dragger. I've gotten a lot of really good tips from people that do it. If you have tips you want to send to me, feel free. I'll be more happy to share them on the show if you so choose to do that. I know I've been getting some emails about a narrative, something to talk about. I will start working on one of those. We have another really good interview coming up, and I will also get something out more on the narrative front. But I hope everybody that's listening gets to spend some time with family and friends, because that's what the holidays are about. Maybe not necessarily arguing, because we all have enough of that in our life. But hopefully everybody gets out there, enjoys some good food, watches some good football, and just enjoy yourselves. And safe travels to all of you. Until next time, my friends, I'll see you down the runway.